it's 13 word pages, I guess, is what they did. I mean, the bug fixes take some space, and the world editor things that I have no idea about need some space as well, but every race has like 1 word page of changes. And there's not too much that they do with heroes, but mostly units. That was one of their big criticisms last time, I guess. So, your initial response, like, how do you feel about it? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle?
The general idea of the patch?
Yeah.
My initial response, well, since, first of all, on the top of the list are the human changes, and they nerf my poor little archmage. It hurts a bit on the inside. But there are some changes I can roll with, for sure. Like the flying machines one is really something I appreciate. Both because I am horrible against Wind Riders, so it will be helpful. And also because I think it opens up a lot of new strategies, especially against Undead.
Alright, so yeah, that matchup is going to be super interesting. Let's go through these notes one by one. I have the Reddit thread up and on the screen now. So yeah, you mentioned your Archmage. First we have Water Elementals, less HP, more damage.
Oh, at first I didn't realize that they increased the damage. I just noticed the HP change. So the change, I mean, what elementals deal a lot of damage.
A lot of damage. I mean, they're one of the strongest DPS summons already, and they buffed it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder what their thought process was. The change in HP, 50 HP on level 2, because let's face it, level 1 water elementals aren't really an issue. It's the level 2 and level 3 that can be really oppressing if you don't have enough dispel. It's really hard to call this either a buff or a nerf. Probably a slight nerf, because the damage increase isn't that big. But then again, if the opponent doesn't have dispel, he probably wouldn't really focus them immediately anyways, so they can stand behind your footman, for example, and deal more damage. Interesting change. I'm a bit confused.
Yeah, I don't really know what to make of it either. Level 1 I think is okay. That's not gonna be a big change there. Level 2, usually when you hit your typical tier 2 push, there's not gonna be Dispel, right? Except for maybe Shadow Priest or something. So this should hurt a little more. Initially.
Yeah. Let's say you're against Orc. And you creep level 3 Archmage, and you decide to go for a Fire Lord Archmage push, for example, when the Orc will have no Dispel.
Yeah.
The Orc never really focuses the Water Elemental, and I don't think the 50 HP nerf will change that, because they are pretty tanky, and by that point in the game you won't have a snare, and you can't hex the Water Elementals. So that kind of push probably gets somewhat of a buff with the damage buff, which is interesting, because I think that's something they wanted to maybe change a bit with the change.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we see it later with the Orc patches that their burrows get super buffed. But I don't think at this point, right? So for humans, there should still be a very decent timing window for this early level 3 push. So.
Yeah, and if I go a little bit further, I noticed that they nerfed basically all Dispel.
Yes.
Except for the Disenchant, and that's basically the only one. So in that regard, the HP nerf on the Water Elemental itself probably is balanced out by the decrease in Dispel effect.
Yeah, I agree.
For example, against Night Elf, against Undead, against Human, when there is Dispel up, you can see this as almost exclusively a buff in some situations.
Okay, I agree. But there's a big nerf for your Brilliance aura. Did you shed a tear reading this?
Almost, I almost did. But then I got happy to see that at least my level 1 Brilliance Aura isn't changed. And, well, Brilliance Aura is a really, really good ability. It's easy to overlook because it doesn't really have a cool, powerful effect. But it's probably one of the best auras in the game, if not the best. So I can see why it's nerfed. And I don't think it would change too much. I'm thinking against Orc is where you have the most casters, and against Night Elf.
I think against
I mean,
Undead, it's also pretty hard because you need a lot of spells, especially when you go tier 3 with the triple hero. So having less mana on your heroes will certainly not help against Undead late game.
Yeah, and it's really hard to quantify at 25. Let's look at level 2 Brilliant Aura. Decreased mana regeneration from 1.5 to 1.25 per second, which doesn't seem like a lot, and I'm not really sure if it is. It's still gonna be a good spell, and usually as a human player, you don't really have to worry about mana. And if you do, it's not in the drawn out fights. It's more like, for example, you use Clap and Thunderbolt.
Yeah.
It depletes really quickly unless you have a mana potion. And that kind of situation won't really change because you still would have had not enough mana. It's... I think maybe against Orc it can be a bit like... you know the battles when the Orc kind of loses its... like all the mana is gone and no speed scrolls left, and that's kind of when the human starts pushing back, even if they lost the fight initially. I think that kind of situation will be one of the most affected ones. Because it's a really drawn out fight where you have a lot of casters. And the 25.25 mana per second might actually matter there.
Yeah, I think you will feel it, but it's not going to be imbalanced or something. The big hit is on level 3, but we rarely see level 3 aura anyway. So for one-on-one, this is not really relevant, I feel.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's a small nerf, but not game.
Yeah.
Like, it won't make human bad.
Right. Mass teleport change also, like, we don't see that too much.
Yeah.
Do you think that the militia duration will change anything?
Oh yeah, they changed that as well.
Yeah.
Let
5 seconds less.
The human. 5 seconds less. That might actually be quite big of a change. There's many maps, I feel, where you can creep something and just barely get back to your base with your militia alive before the Blade Master or the Death Knight comes.
Yeah.
And this might make it so that you have to, for example, bring another peasant in some creep situations and delays your tech, and like it can be somewhat of a minor snowball effect that delays everything. And when you creep, of course, the expansion, you usually aren't in a hurry to get them to peasants from militia. So that's a nerf. I can see that having like not a huge effect, but a decent effect.
Okay. I think this could be bad for new players or less experienced players maybe, because I think 2-base play is kind of challenging when you start to play the game. So expanding in general is harder there for the newer players. Maybe that's not the best thing to do. We'll see if that has
and of course the tower rushes.
Yes.
But in that situation, I mean, if you tower rush an Orc or an Idol, for example, the only races you basically tower rush, sometimes it's really good to have the militia actually fight a little bit for you, and maybe kill a burrow or damage a moonwell before they turn into peasants. But sometimes you just want them to become peasants earlier so that you can actually build your towers. I'm unsure if this is good or bad for tower rushing.
Okay. So you have to change that and play a lot on the PTR.
Yeah.
Footman nerf for the defend. I don't really know what they mean by defend consistently reflects damage from piercing attacks again. There must have been some kind of bug that nobody was really aware of, I guess. Or were you?
Oh, then we have it. Damage reduction, reflection damage. What do you mean? Where do you find it?
It got a little nerfed. I think it's at the bug fix things.
Oh, okay. So that's why I didn't see it.
Yeah, for Reddit I put them together because I think it makes sense to put them together.
Yeah, I'm reading it on the Battle.net page and it's not as structured.
Yeah, I think the Reddit thing is pretty structured now.
Yeah, okay, I'll go check that out.
There was a chance to reflect. Now it probably reflects every shot. That would be sick. That would be a huge buff, right? But
sorry, I haven't found it quite yet. Okay.
No problem.
Footman defend consistently reflects damage from piercing attacks again.
Yeah.
Damage reduction, reflection damage.
So my understanding is it got nerfed, but also like buffed at the same time because it's like reflecting more or more often.
It wasn't intended to always reflect the damage, right? It had like a, I don't know, 50% chance to actually reflect. And in my mind, that wasn't a bug, but that was intended.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think so too.
And consistently doesn't necessarily have to mean every single shot. Maybe there was some kind of I don't know.
I guess we have to test
tell
that.
Because I mean, it seemed to be working in my mind as intended already.
Yeah, I think we have to check the world editor.
And if you're right, and I mean, if it actually is so that they, for example, reflect every single shot, that would be probably a buff, even in light of the other nerfs.
Yes, of course. I think the 10% are fine on the damage reduction.
Yeah. I'm just like, if this was in a vacuum and that nothing else was changed, I would be worried about the human against undead matchup, because I think that's when defend is most commonly like necessary. You know, the fiend push and all.
Of course.
But I think other changes are going to make the matchup change in quite some ways. So I'm not really worried about that.
Yeah. Okay, so we check on the defend and then report back another day. Priests casting range increased in a 5-second cooldown now. Will that cooldown change anything?
So I'm
hard to tell, right? Like,
I'm imagining human mirror, because that's when I think most dispel is used.
Yeah.
You have to see this change together with the next change, which is spell steal on spellbreakers.
Yes.
The cooldown is doubled, because usually, basically, against undead you never use the spell. Against night elf, really not either. I mean, sometimes, but then you don't need more than 2-3 dispels. Against orc, I don't use it. I know some people do. So in my mind, it's only like in my own play, it would only be in human mirror, and then against water elementals. And in human mirror, if you go for tier 2 expansion, you will have like 5-6 priests, and I guess it could have a, I mean, it could affect the matchup, but then again, it's human mirror, so I don't think it would make anything broken.
Yeah, I mean, both sides are doing it. The reason, of course, why you don't go for dispel too much is because you have the spellbreakers, or had the spellbreakers with only 3 seconds cooldown the spell steal. Is this a big nerf? I mean, thinking especially against Roar and Spirit Link. And Reju, of course. On paper, this should be a buff to Night Elf and Orc.
Yes.
The question is how will it affect the matchup, really?
It's interesting, because I think in many situations, when the human has like 6 spellbreakers, for example, or more, which will be pretty common in at least against Night Elf, and then in the human against orc matchup when the game goes a little bit longer than 50 supply. If you use the roar spell and I steal 6 roars, that might make it so that even the first round of stealing might transfer 50% of the roar.
Yeah, that's
which
true.
would make the spell kind of negated because it buffs both sides. And against orc, I feel like you won't, if you talk about the priests, you won't really want to dispel all the spirit link because then you will be dispelling or you're slow.
Yeah.
And I'd rather have an orc army with spirit link and slow than without any spells. So in some situations it changes things, but I don't think it's a big change really.
Okay.
And they got a buff as well with the increased cast range. Also nothing significant.
Yeah, does that mean that they can cast from further away, or that the range of the dispel is bigger?
I would think that it means that they can cast from further away.
Yeah, me too, because 600 range would be sick. Speaking of ranges and radiuses and stuff, mortar teams, these poor little fellas.
That's an interesting change. I've been thinking about this one ever since I saw the first leak of the patch notes.
Yeah.
So think about it. When are mortar teams used? Against orc, not really ever.
No.
Against undead, not really ever. I mean, sometimes against orc, but very situational. In human mirror, yes, it happens if the human, if you expand, or one human decides to go for tier 3, which is not the popular build. And then again, it's human mirror, so it doesn't really break the game.
Yeah.
It's only really a unit consistently used against Night Elf.
True.
And then I wonder, why would you nerf a unit which is only seen in one matchup and isn't really a big problem in that matchup?
Yeah.
It might be it's a good addition to the army against Night Elf, don't get me wrong. But I don't see it as a unit that breaks the matchup. And if you wanted to buff, then again, if they see that human has an advantage against Night Elf in tournaments and statistics, it makes sense to nerf the only unit that's basically only used against Night Elf.
Yeah.
Because you don't affect the other matchups. So I guess that's gotta be the reasoning, right?
True. Yeah, I guess it's a little too late because in today's tournaments we don't see mortar teams too much anymore. It's more like the 70 supply push, the fast you can with riflemen. So they're kind of fading out of the meta. But for example, in some 2-2 tournaments, we have seen ridiculous human armies with like 12 mortar teams or something. Of course,
I would hands down say that mortar teams are the best siege unit in the game.
Yeah, of course.
So in that regard, it kind of balances things out.
Yeah. So I prepare.
These changes are really hard to kind of quantify somehow because it's like the siege radius and.
Yeah, I visualized that in my video I did on YouTube. So I show the slide on stream now if you want to take a look. In these tiny little green circles, there's the peasant standing, so you know a little bit how much that is. So yeah, the radius is obviously smaller now. I think that's fair. The damage calculation is still normal. I think the big issue were not mortar teams itself, but fragmentation shards, because there was a bug actually that I know now. There is half damage radius and quarter damage radius, and in patch 1.29 and prior, the half damage radius was larger than the quarter damage radius, so it always dealt the full the full fragmentation shard damage, which was 18. Now that is reduced, and the quarter damage radius is actually working as intended.
Okay, I see.
So that's a little complicated, I guess, but
yeah,
maybe the graphics.
It's interesting. It's really interesting. I really want to know what they thought and like making these changes because, as I said, it's only used in Night Elf. I guess human against Night Elf, and fragmentation shards aren't really used in that matchup. So changing them is it's confusing to me.
Yeah. I think it's good and I think it's necessary. I like that change actually, but I fear that they are now not used anymore, like in no matchup with that nerf.
Yeah. I have a feeling that they still will be used because fragmentation shards is such a good upgrade either way, and if you manage to, I mean, in the situations where you previously would use fragmentation shards, I think it's still going to be ridiculously strong.
Yeah, maybe it's like more about coverage of damage types than about the damage itself.
I think you're onto something actually. Because fragmentation shards, if you have even like 3-4 mortars, they rip through everything that is unarmored, and even things that aren't, in like 1 or maybe 2 volleys. So now if it takes 3 volleys, I still think that it's going to be really strong.
Yeah. Okay, coming to my favorite, in quotes, unit.
Oh boy. This one is good.
The flying machines, more HP, cost like a little more damage, and flak cannons on tier 2.
Okay, where do we start?
Yeah, where do we start? I don't know.
Let's go for the obvious one. Human against undead, right?
Yeah.
The problem against undead is that you basically, unless you play Rifleman, which isn't in style and is regarded worse than going for tier 3, you have to get flying machines and you have to get many of them to deal with destroyers. So you basically have to get tier 3 eventually, unless you decide to go for a worse style. You're forced into that playstyle.
Yeah.
And with this change, I can see things like tier 2 expansions with casters into flying machines being viable, and then like breakers, a lot of breakers, maybe 2-3 sorks and a couple of priests, especially if the undead goes for fiends. I'm really excited to try that out. And I mean, it's not only that they are available at tier 2, the flak cannon upgrades, which is really good against undead. It's also the buff itself, which will change even tier 3 human against tier 3 undead.
Yeah.
Probably very much in humans' favor.
Of course.
I think this might be, I mean, it looks like a really big buff, and let's keep in mind that they also nerfed the panda later on, which is something used against flying machines. I think they might have overdone things here.
I agree.
I'm very excited.
In my opinion, flying machines are now by far the best anti-air unit in the game. I don't know how you can play something that is flying versus human now. Like, what can counter this? For undead, Carrion Swarm does only hit 5 units. You don't really care about 5 flying machines, right?
Yeah. And the thing about human is that, like, if you play a lot of FFA, at least back when I played a lot of FFA, human was super strong at countering like they had all the answers to any kind of army. But when they faced up against 2-3 different kinds of armies, they had a ton of flying machines that couldn't hit the ground, and like it got kind of messy. So I don't think their actual anti-air is an issue. Like,
me neither.
Even before this, flying machines were probably at least top 2 best anti-air as it is. I could see, I mean, if the only change would have been the flak cannons being moved to tier 2, I would have been really happy with that.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm just
over the moon.
Basically. Yeah.
Would you think that more people abuse that for lame with the flying machine bombs and just mass them?
That would only, I mean, I don't think that would be imba or something. The only change there is 50 more HP for 10 more gold. I don't think that will be an issue in any way.
Okay. Good. I think Night Elves also have no chance to go. Oh, do they? To go Chimeras? We'll see about that.
I still think flying machines will be like you have to get a decent amount of them.
Yeah.
Now that amount will be smaller, but if you have like these big chunky units like chimeras and frost worms, let's say you get 2 chimeras, which will be easier to access now in the new patch.
Yeah.
Flying machines probably won't be the best answer if you can get like I mean Dragonhawks will still be better at countering the big, chunky, high HP areas. But then if they decide to counter the Dragonhawks with, for example, Hippogriffs, flying machines will be super good.
Yeah.
So maybe an extension. But I still think you can get like 2 chimeras just to kind of threaten the human and making maybe overextend, and 2 chimeras by themselves can actually deal a lot of damage.
Okay. So you're not as afraid as I am that this breaks the human versus everything matchup. I really think the only thing that can match them is like Bat Riders or something. Undead can't go for destroyers or worms anymore. That's my feeling.
Yeah, I feel bad for my teammates Gut, who likes to mass destroyers basically every game against human.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
I mean, this was the biggest complaint, I guess, for humans in the entire game, the destroyer push. Especially on lower levels. It's really hard to face that. Except with towers, which nobody really wants.
Yeah.
So I see that they want a solution, need a solution for that issue. But yeah, maybe it's too strong. Maybe.
Yeah, we'll see. It's a really big change for sure.
Tanks! 3 supply up to 4.
Meh, I never build tanks. I know they're really strong. I don't like the playstyle, and I think there are options. So for me personally, I don't really care. But
Okay.
meh, I mean, I know there's a lot of human players who really loves going tanks. A lot of them actually. And a supply change like this, I feel like when you're going tanks, you kinda, at least in the games I watched recently, you kinda hover against maybe 60 supply maximum. Because you suicide them all the time, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully you kill more than you lose. And most of the time you do.
Sure.
So I think being at 70 out of 80 instead of 60 out of 80 will only be like the only change there will be the two more farms that you need, because when you get to tier 3, I mean I don't think it'll make you go into high upkeep, and I don't think that you would be in low upkeep either way if they are at 3 supply. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't think it's a huge change actually.
I think they can still be used to distract and buy time with like 1 or 2 or 3 tanks, but they can't be massed too much anymore, because I feel where tanks become really, really dangerous and a little imbalanced is when you have triple workshop. And before you can like one phase of production was like 9 supply and now it's 12. I think that is a change for that triple workshop play.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about that one. Because the few games I play tanks, I like to keep the pressure up and send them 3 at a time. But you're right, there are human players who pull up like 9 tanks and send them all at a time.
Shout out to Romantic.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's 9 more supply that I might actually make the human going to high upkeep.
Yeah.
I mean, 9 times 4 is 36, and then you have like 20 workers, no more, maybe 25 workers and 3 heroes, and you either way you'll end up in a lot of supply.
Yeah. So I think for the distraction it's still okay, but for the massing it's a nice nerf, and they still have a place in the game like that. They're not super nerfed to oblivion, so I guess that's fine.
Yeah, and that's actually a very healthy nerf, I feel like.
Yeah.
If that's the way things will go down. Because the distraction tanks are not as, I mean, it still makes for interesting games.
Yeah.
But the mass 9 to 12 tanks and hope that the opponent doesn't see and react in time, and then just steamroll their base. It's not really fun for anybody.
Yeah, I totally agree. So
that's cool.
That's healthy. Yeah, maybe if that's not enough and people still do that, they can still nerf it further. But I guess it's good.
Mhm.
Same for masonry, that fucking upgrade that I hate the most in the entire game.
Masonry must be the upgrade nerfed the most times in basically any Blizzard game or any RTS game.
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah,
It's
and it's
still
still,
too strong.
so good.
Yeah, it's still ridiculous.
And this change, it's like there's a lot of smaller changes, like the breaker double cooldown and the militia and the Brilliance aura and the water elementals, which in a vacuum doesn't really seem like anything. And this one, even more so, like 25 more gold and 25 more lumber when you have 2 bases. It's not really an issue like by itself, but all these small things together might drag down the human power level actually a decent amount.
Okay.
Because I mean, yeah, do you have an objection to that? Like, it's only 25 gold, 25 lumber.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Like, it won't make a difference at all. That this is a little more expensive. I don't know if I agree that humans are weaker with that patch. Maybe they are. Maybe you are right, and I overestimated things a little, especially with the flying machines.
Situationally.
Yeah.
I mean, if you only look at the human changes.
Yeah, you have more nerfs than buffs.
There's like every change so far is a nerf, except for the flying machines.
Yeah, that's true.
So, of course, when flying machines will be used, it could be a buff, but for example, like human against orc will be nerfed if the human changes were in a vacuum.
Yeah, that's correct. So the ivory towers, will that change anything? Reduce the stock from 3 to 2? I think that's once again one of those smaller things.
Yeah, it's. I feel like ivory towers most of the time, if they are an issue, I think they are an issue in offensive tower rushing.
Mm-hmm.
And that isn't really in style anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Very, very rare.
I think.
Yeah.
Because they used to cost the same as a scout tower, so 30 gold, 20 lumber in the Arcane Vault. And then they nerfed it to 40 gold, 30 lumber. And that actually, it's not a big change at all. It's basically only 30 more gold and 30 more lumber.
Sure. Yeah.
But it feels when you are on a really tight build order and you take to tier 2 as fast as possible against orc, you get your Arcane Sanctums and you barely have enough money for the sorceress, and then you have to wait 3-4 more seconds before your push. It can actually change things.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was a patch that was applied a long time ago, and I think that it already had its intended effect in my mind. And because when you build towers at your own base, you always use your peasants anyways.
Yeah.
Except for emergency situations, when you really, really, really have to get them up fast and you're under attack. I don't really get this change, but it's not gonna make a big of a change either way.
Yeah, maybe we see it on lower levels and people of that skill region complain about it still. But yeah, I don't see an issue on a pro level at all.
Yeah.
Will you use the Orb of Fire now? The super OP 10 damage.
Oh boy, oh boy. What I'm interested in is whether the splash damage will be 10 damage now.
Ah, yeah, it doesn't say it in the
Previously,
notes, right?
it was 5 damage.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it doesn't state that it's changed, but hopefully it will be 10 now, because the damage buff is 10.
Yeah.
That would make it not at the same level of all the other orbs, but actually an orb to buy. And I'm pretty excited about this one.
Okay. I thought it was just, I don't know, swiped away, but okay. Thorzain is curious about the Orb of Fire, so we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, any buff to the Orb of Fire is greatly appreciated.
It's good, yeah.
It's so underwhelming.
Yeah.
Not only that it's the weakest one, but it's like the least cool one as well.
That's
it doesn't
true.
apply some cool effect, and lightning strikes around the statues, of course.
Yeah.
And a splash damage radius increase 10 units. It's I can't put that in any kind of simulation in my head to see what kind of a change that would make.
I don't think it's much. I don't think you will notice it actually, but
yeah, I think like sometimes it feels like the orb doesn't deal damage to units.
Yeah.
Basically just standing next to each other. So maybe now it actually will. Like, yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's kind of the how do we call it? Like the range that it needs to affect one more unit or something, and they figured it out with a world editor.
Yeah, exactly. Like units that are just moved through a path without any clumping up. Could be.
Agent says it is 10 damage splash now. He tested it.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay. So that's good to know. And makes it a lot better than if the splash was still 5, of course.
Right. So we covered your human race, of course. Now we want to hear from you what has changed about the other races and how it affects the matchup versus human. That should be the most interesting.
Let's just go back to the orb.
Okay, yeah, sure.
I was thinking, in the current meta, when does human go tier 3?
Undead?
It's against undead.
Yeah.
Sometimes against Night Elf, in particular if they go Warden.
Yeah.
And sometimes in Human Mirror.
In Human Mirror, undead, I can see it.
Yeah, maybe it's just because I like the style and I tend to probably play it more than average. And in games where Human Mirror expand, when one of the guys expand, you go tier 3.
Yeah.
And I don't. Maybe you were going to say that you don't see it affecting Human Mirror, and I interrupted you. But let's talk about undead. They will have fiends, abominations, statues, and destroyers, and maybe in particular statues like that will negate all the splash, basically.
Yeah.
And as you said, undead is the matchup where you go tier 3 the most of the time. So there's still quite a big risk that this change won't bring anything at all, unfortunately. Except for the damage increase on the hero.
Yeah, but the thing is, as human, you don't really have the damage dealing heroes. Like a Demon Hunter or Blade Master, obviously, or even a Lich. You really lack that, and so you have no need for the damage increase on a human hero.
Yeah. Imagine... Let's theorycraft a little bit about putting the Orb of Fire at tier 2.
Okay.
What would you think about that?
Well, it would make the tier 2 push even stronger if you have the money for it.
Yeah, then but it is still expensive.
Yeah, 325. I don't think you can afford that early on tier 2 because you need the second tier, you need the sanctums, you need like whatever. So
because in my... Sorry, I interrupted you again.
No problem. I don't think it would change too much.
Yeah.
It would help to defend an expo, for example, a bit, but then there are statues as well. I don't see a change there.
Yeah, I think if that would be the case, you could even more opt for the stay tier 2 against undead style without Rifleman, because you could use your buffs flying machines and your Mountain King to attack the destroyers. But I feel like where I see this increase in splash damage probably doing the most would be in like a standard human against undead with casters against a basic orc army, and the human would stay at tier 2. I mean, low upkeep, get the orb, and then advance, because those fights are pretty long, and the 10 splash damage, they don't really have any way to... I mean, they have the healing wave, but it's not really the same as a statue in that regard.
And you have the effect already that with the Spirit Link, everything drains a little. That would just increase the effect, I guess.
Yeah, so basically that's the only real like battle scenario where I
Yeah.
could see myself thinking, oh, I would want Orb of Fire that deals 10 splash damage.
Yeah.
And you never encountered that scenario with the human being tier 3.
That's true.
So, yeah,
So still no use for the orb, unfortunately.
probably not.
Okay. Let's go to maybe the winner of this patch. We'll see about that. Hello, Orcs. Blade Master once
Yes.
again gets nerfed. Will make you happy, I guess.
Yes, but I don't think the Blade Master. I'll get a lot of hate in the chat for this, but I don't think he's that big of an issue. In that he would make, I mean, it's a really strong hero, one of the strongest in the game.
Yeah.
But Orc really needs him. Don't you
Yeah.
agree? Hopefully, the other changes will make it so that they don't, and I guess that's the plan. But 2 agility at level 1 in particular, that's quite the change, I would say.
Yeah, it's basically like taking the circlet away.
Yeah.
Damage-wise.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's attack speed, it's armor, it's damage, it's like it's quite significant, I would say.
yeah, I agree. And yeah, maybe they really want to force the Farseer play on us. I don't know. I don't think the Blade Master was really an issue as well. Like, of course he's strong. Of course he does a lot of damage, especially against your Archmage. But you can move around that, I feel, if you get boots, especially with the boots change that we see later. That there is 2 stocks of boots and not 1, so both heroes can get the boots. So I think an early harassing Blade Master is not that big of a deal anymore.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Can you make your mic a little louder, by the way?
I can move it closer. Is this
okay.
Better?
Yeah, that should be better. Nice.
Okay, I can increase the volume as well, but if this is good enough, I can just keep it like this.
Okay, should be fine, I guess. We will keep an eye on the chat.
Okay.
And there's a bug fix on the Blade Master as well, saying able to pass through intended items during Windwalk again. So yeah, that's just the bug that was fixed, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't notice that was a bug, to be honest.
I think I saw one video of Funny Warcraft 3 or something explaining it, that they couldn't really walk through items for some reason, but yeah.
Okay.
So, Headhunters, quite a few changes there. More HP for Berserkers as well. They take less damage while in Berserk mode, and the regen is better with the upgrade that we never see. So this is interesting to me because everybody was complaining that Orc lacks damage in the later stages, and especially like the Headhunters were one subject that everybody wanted to touch upon. And now they don't give them damage, but sustain.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
It's weird.
Where do we put this change?
By the way, the people want you to be louder.
Okay, still louder. I
Yeah.
will fix that. 1 second.
All right.
That's good. At least they don't want me muted. I know some Twitch chats can be quite picky.
I think they are pretty welcoming and enjoy having you here. But now you're
that's
you're
the
better.
Warcraft spirit, isn't it?
It is.
Okay.
So Headhunters.
Yes, Headhunters. More HP and more HP on Berserkers as well, and damage debuff is decreased. When are Headhunters used? I guess undead mostly in the current meta. Some situational use with the the double lodge play where you go mass casters and you might throw in a couple Headhunters.
Yeah. Sometimes we see it against human tower rushes.
You're right. And mostly for the damage then, of course.
Yeah.
I don't see this change doing anything. Well,
okay.
There might be something like how much damage does a level 2 Frost Nova deal? I'm thinking maybe if this makes the Berserker survive a Coil Nova at level 2, it might be impactful. Like 25%, 25 HP doesn't sound like a lot, but it can matter.
Yeah.
So that will be something to keep an eye out for.
True that.
Otherwise, it definitely won't affect the human against orc matchup.
Not really, no.
Even if the meta would change so that orcs go for tier 3 more often, I don't think that they would implement berserkers in that army.
I agree. You don't really need that here.
Yeah.
Against undead, though, going hand in hand with the change of the Orb of Corruption, of course, that should be, or should result in longer living headhunters and therefore more damage.
Mm-hmm.
So I think against undead, it's a pretty big buff.
Yeah. And let's talk about the change in fortified armor as well, because I think we need to bring this
that's the most
here.
important one, yes, of course.
Yeah, and against Night Elf, there, back in the days at least, was a strategy you would take to tier 3, get 3 heroes, probably a Naga. Maybe you would only get the Blade Master and the Naga, and you would make Demolishers and like Tower Rush the Night Elf. Do you know of this strategy?
Not really, no. But wasn't it played by Focus versus Moon sometime on TR? Yeah, I know what you mean now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it wasn't a particularly super strong strat, but
Shao Tish played it a lot.
Yeah, okay. I know Kiara played it sometimes as well. You know, the Danish orc.
Mm-hmm.
That's possible on tier 2. Now, the only reason that they taked to tier 3 was
reinforced defenses.
Yeah, you could get the orb and the liquid, not the liquid fire, the burning oil. But it was basically mainly for the fortified defenses. So I'm worried that that kind of a strategy will be really oppressive against Night Elf. Especially if they do it sneakily, like send the peon to build like Taker style. Chop down the woods and build a fortified tower behind there. And then come with
really
the
hard to cancel then, yeah.
And
it's funny because
that kind of a style. Sorry, let me just
no, just continue.
The Headhunters has a place in that kind of a push, in my opinion. So the combined changes of the fortified armor, reinforced defenses being moved to tier 2, and the Headhunter buff might make tier 2 tower rushes against Night Elf pretty strong, especially since Night Elf units used against Orc are going to be nerfed.
Yeah.
So maybe not only against Undead will this be a buff, but also against Night Elf.
It's interesting because when I saw the change with the reinforced defenses, I only thought about it defensively. So how will this help against human? How will this help against Night Elf when they push into the Orc base? It's funny that you mentioned the offensive buff of this with tower pushes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is like by far the biggest buff for Orc.
Yeah, I only mentioned it offensively because we were talking about Headhunters. And
okay.
In combination with that, we can talk more about the defensive capabilities about that now, or when we get to the.
We can do it now, I guess. Since we started it, so I think the big question is: can you have reinforced defenses up when the human or Night Elf arrives in your base, right?
Yes, probably. I mean, it is an upgrade that takes quite some time, isn't it?
Yeah, it takes some time indeed.
But not necessarily super long. It's like an average build time, I would say. And I didn't even realize that they reduced the cost of the upgrade as well. Okay. So an even bigger change then. So the question was if the orc could get the upgrade in time for human pushes.
Yeah. I mean,
or Night Elf.
Not like you tech to tier 2 and then you go for reinforced defenses immediately, but you need the other stuff as well. So when can you fit this in is the big question, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like if the orc plays against human and like most of the time you won't get the war mill unless you are very heavily harassed and you lost a lot of mining time, or you really, really suspect a tower rush. And if you really, really suspect a tower rush and get the war mill, then you will obviously prioritize that upgrade. This is a hard one.
This is a really hard one because, especially against Night Elf, you, as you say, you need the war mill as well. Can you afford that? You need to have an army at tier 2. You need the TC as fast as possible, so your priorities are certainly not on war mill and reinforced defenses at this point.
Yeah, and I don't really... I'm not a big fan of the human against Night Elf matchup, so I don't watch it. I mean, sorry, Orc against Night Elf, of course. Yeah. So I don't watch it too rigorously. Okay. And I know that the Druids of the Talons are really good at destroying burrows when they are not fortified, of course. But I feel like most of the burrow killing comes with the Demon Hunter and Beastmaster if they are unable to get the tier 2 buildings or already kill them. And then a lot of the game will be the Orc kind of pressurizing with a level 2 TC and then trying to creep up to level 3. And is the burrow raids in Night Elf against Orc a big issue? That's what I'm trying to ask you.
Yeah. I mean, they get kicked over and over, so they are kind of the Achilles heel for Orcs for sure.
Yeah, and I distinctly remember games where the Orc let the Night Elf get into the base and then it's just over. But it feels like most games the Orc will have control of the game enough to make that not happen in the current meta. But maybe that means that they have to put effort into trying to make that not happen. Yeah. So if they don't have to do that with the reinforcing fences, they might that might enable them to put their effort and scouting into other things for sure.
Yeah, it's very hard to predict, I feel, because we don't really know what's going to change with the meta in general. You suggested Orcs doing tower rushes. I spoiler a bit and say maybe we see a lot of Night Elf tower rushes now.
Yes,
with the Huntress change, with the Glaive Thrower change, with the Protector change. So, yeah, we really don't know.
I didn't even realize that the Glaives were going to be changed.
Yeah, man, 33% damage increase. It's sick.
Okay, so that might make the potential game-breaking threat of the tier 2 tower rushes not really... I mean, I still think they will be used, but maybe it won't be game-breaking.
No.
Okay, that's good to know.
That's certainly interesting.
It will change things up for sure.
Exactly.
But as you say, I don't think that the Orcs in the current meta would be able to afford the War Mill and upgrade. Just to make sure that they are safe against raids when they have the capability of being safe by playing better.
Yeah, especially not against Night Elf, because I think the Night Elf is there, like, once he hits tier 2, he goes to the tavern, bam, he's right in your face, there's no time. Against human, maybe?
Yeah, and I'm really worried about this upgrade when it comes to Orc against human, actually. Not as a defense against tower rushes, but rather, as I told you earlier, I really hate playing against Windriders.
Yes.
And this just makes that kind of a strategy so much more stronger. Staying on tier 2 with a Farseer or a Blade Master and the second hero of the Orc's choice, laming with Windriders. Usually you would be able to... I mean, I think raiding the burrows, if you find an opportunity, is actually used quite a lot in that kind of situation. You hope to be the one that reaches the Orc's base before they can reach yours.
Yeah.
And then you kill 3-4 burrows and TP back. That's pretty common in human against Orc when the Orc lames you with Windriders. And it's not that easy for them to put up an expansion because you have so much magic damage to kill 2-3 towers, and that's not really an issue. And even still, it's really hard, I feel, and I know that I'm worse than average when it comes to bidding Windriders. So I might be just too afraid. But I feel like it will be strong, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Being aggressive, putting the human in his base, and meanwhile putting up even 2 towers with the fortified defenses will be, very unfun to play against.
Yep. I mean, as an undead, I feel you. It should be the same there, I guess.
Yeah.
We see so many tier 3 expansions now. They always go with 1 peon, build 1 or 2 towers, and then once they are up, they're setting up the expansion. So maybe we see that on tier 3 now instead of tier 2. The other way around, of course, and that will make life hard for the undead as well.
Mm-hmm. But don't you think that the orcs will play tier 3 just for the orb against undead?
Yeah, Orb and Kodo Aura, right? They kind of need the
And
Kodo Aura.
the 3 hero, of course.
Yeah.
So I think even with this change, they will go tier 3. And for the buffed berserkers as well.
Yeah, and they kind of have to rush tier 3 as well, right?
Yeah.
So maybe I'm just panicking a little.
But now I'm talking about the normal meta. I guess if the orc decides to go for, let's say, the same thing, Wind Rider's lame with 2 heroes, which isn't, I mean, it's seen occasionally. But they can put up an expansion the same way against human, which might be a pain in the ass for undead. Yeah, you're right.
But maybe we see a lot of necro rushes now against orc.
Maybe. Who knows?
Spoiler again.
Spoiler!
So rest of the orc changes. Bad Riders do more damage. I don't get that. Like, the only time you see Bad Riders is when somebody lames you with liquid fire. Now that's stronger. Hooray.
Oh yeah, I even forgot about this one. This ties into what I was talking about, of course, Wind Riders. You counter Wind Riders with what? Basically, Dragonhawk Riders.
Yeah.
And then the orc builds some Bat Riders, and it's kind of a battle between the Dragonhawks and Hex and Wind Riders and Bat Riders. I think with this change... Oh, no. Okay, I got things totally messed up. Okay, I thought that they buffed the explosive...
No. It's just the right click.
Okay.
Just the right click.
Oh, I was scared for a second. Because with the buff, the Dragonlocks just barely survive now as it is with like 25 HP, so yeah. Okay.
No, it's just the right click. Yeah, exactly. It's just for laming. And why would you encourage laming? I don't really get that.
They really seem to be putting orc in a lame laming category.
As if we haven't seen mass raiders before, or too much mass raiders. There's a little buff, like, of course we have to talk about Spirit Walkers, not in the Spirit Lodge anymore, but in the Tauren Totem. And that is available on tier 2. That does not mean everybody, because I saw it in chat quite a bit. Taurens are not available on tier 2. They're still a tier 3 unit, so don't get that wrong.
There's a lively discussion going on right as we speak.
Okay.
Okay, that's good to know. I wasn't quite sure either.
Yeah.
So I could see the Taurens. I mean, if they would make them tier 2, I don't think it would break the game as long as they keep the Pulverize ability at tier 3, because that's what makes the Tauren good.
Yeah.
Where did we leave off? We were at the Shaman, I guess. We were talking about the caster changes overall.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. So, with the Walkers gone from the Lodge, do you think we will ever see Shamans and Witch Doctors again? Because I don't. Why would you build them? There's no reason.
They did nerf the spell once again. I don't think it matters. I think the same as you. You won't really see them.
Yeah.
But you have to keep in mind that so many dispel abilities have been nerfed. So maybe there's some kind of a funky strat. There are players who like going for mass witch doctors.
Yeah, the Great Wall.
But they aren't changed either way, so they didn't get a buff in any regard.
They did. It wasn't in my patch notes, so I don't have that prepared. But I think Witch Doctors have more regen or something now.
The troll regeneration.
It's from 0.67 mana regen to 0.72, so...
Oh, okay.
That's like nothing, I guess.
Yeah, you could just ignore that one, I guess.
Yeah.
Shaman. Then again, I think didn't the Purge get nerfed, or is it only
Purge is buffed. It's
damage to summon from
decreased
400 to
mana
200?
cost. That's just for the creeps, as far as I
Just
know.
for the creeps. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
As far as I know. Otherwise, it would be ridiculous.
And the mana, this won't really change things. Do you remember when orcs would play Farseer, Tauren Chieftain, Grunts, Shamans against human?
That's a long time ago.
Yep, that's when human players would play Rifleman against orc.
Was that Reign of Chaos?
No, it was the Frozen Throne, maybe 2004 or 5.
Okay.
Uh,
So the very early stages.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Rotterdam, famous Dutch player gone StarCraft 2 commentator, he still played this style even up to when he quit, maybe 2008, 2009. And it was a style that I would occasionally lose to. I think there was some other guy who would play it as well. And it was the worst style if you compare it to the standard style. But it wasn't absolutely trash. But these changes aren't big enough to actually make it good either way. Maybe if there was a big buff to the lightning shield, I could see shamans actually being used.
Yeah, I think it would be like they could have a place in the meta to dispel water elementals early on, because Purge is rather strong, of course, and you have it faster than the dispel of the walkers. So in theory, that could work somehow, but it just doesn't. I think it's still too expensive.
Yeah, and these days you won't even have the walkers and the shamans in the same building anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So that doesn't make sense at all. If you could transition from early Purge, like if you could transition from early Purge to then the Walker dispel somehow, but nobody did that anyway. So.
Yeah, I remember there was some theory crafting back in the days when Newman would always tower rush with Archmage Beastmaster. But as you said, it didn't really come into fruition either way.
Yeah, this one damage, that won't change things, I guess.
Yeah.
But will we see more Thorzain now?
Whoa.
Oh, wow. So will we see Thorzain now? Where can you see Thorzains in which matchup? Because I don't see them anywhere.
I see them actually being used against human.
All right.
In particular, the situation would be human fast expanse. Orc likes to go tier 3 against human fast expanse to secure their fast expansion. And they also like having spirit walkers and raiders. So they make this the standard army.
I didn't
raiders,
think
grunts, spirit walkers.
Yeah.
Take to tier 3 because they have the time, because the human fast expanded.
Yeah.
And then if the human decides to go for what is now standard when you fast expand, the tier 2 push with a lot of breakers, a lot of casters. Taurens really wreck that.
It's true.
It's okay, so to be honest, I've only played against orcs going Taurens maybe 2 times when I fast expanded. And those were games where I had a very big advantage going into tier 3, and I didn't lose, so I can't really say that they're imba, but they almost turned the tide.
Yeah, they are crazy strong.
So in that situation, and that's a feasible situation that could very likely occur in this new patch, because you would already have the totem up for your spirit walkers. So
that saves you a lot of time.
Good change. Good change.
Okay,
actually.
yeah. I didn't see that because I was thinking about the normal matchup versus human, and there I see like the human is too fast, so you can't get to tier 3. But if he expands, you're absolutely right, and that was, I think, a little bit imbalanced, especially on Echo Isles. I mentioned it over and over again. If you go triple Sanctum, then the Orc has nothing that he can do, basically. That's true. Torrents versus... That is working, yeah.
Yeah. And we also have to keep in mind that they have easier access to tier 3. With the fortified towers at tier 2.
True.
So maybe I don't think we will see anything game breaking develop in the first couple of weeks or months. But maybe later on, when the orcs learn how to really properly use their fortified defenses, Torrents might actually be something that you see.
So it sounds like this is a lot about timings for orcs to figure them out and how to make it work. But in theory, I think we agree that this is definitely a win for orcs, and they got buffed pretty hard.
With the specifically the reinforced defenses.
Yeah.
And so the big issue with the Torrents is that you have to build a separate building. Compare Torrents to Knights.
Yeah.
Knights are really good because they're a good unit, and you make them as soon as you hit tier 3. You don't need anything more. And I think Torrents aren't. They are more situational than Knights, but that was probably their biggest issue.
Certainly.
You kind of had to take to tier 4 to get Torrents in some ways.
Yeah.
So let's not count the Torrents out quite yet.
All right. Yeah, you changed my mind on that one for sure. They will be faster. One thing that I guess everybody will love, speed scroll no longer applies to Goblin Zappers. That was just unfair, and now it's removed, so that's good.
Yeah. Not really a lot to talk about there.
No. Same for spike barricades, I guess, which nobody will use anyway.
Uh-huh.
Or will they? No, not really.
Probably not.
Did we forget anything? No, I don't think so. So, I'd like to take a little break. Like 5 minutes, and then we're back with the Undead, the Night Elf, and the neutral heroes. If you have the time still.
I do have the time. I do.
Awesome! So, okay guys, you can ask some questions in chat or put them on Reddit. I will read them as soon as I'm back from my smoke break. And then, in 5 minutes, we're back here with more Balance Talk with Thorzain. So, see you in a bit.
See you soon.
Alright. Break is over, we are refreshed, and we continue with our Balance Talk. Neo and Thorzain here, talking patch 1.30 that hit the PTR 1 hour ago, I guess. And we do have some subs coming in, so thank you guys. Dizzyit for 4 months, the Brass Man for 6 months, saying Tier 2 Torrent Totem, what a time to be alive. Yeah, let's see who's happy about that and who's not. Forga, 3-month resub. Did you know Remo's Mutter played versus Grubby in a Battle.net ladder last week? No, I didn't, but glad that Remo's mother still enjoys Warcraft. White Sprint, 7-month resub. Berserker, bigger archers in damage. Yeah, but, I mean, that's not really the issue, I guess. Drakatos, 5-month subscription. This stream and the new patch are sponsored by this subscription. Don't spend everything for the incoming Warcraft 3 microtransactions. Okay, and Tante Chili, thank you very much for subbing as well. So, we covered human, we covered orc, now we cover night elves, and one particular Swedish night elf, human, orc, undead player will be very happy about that for sure.
Who might you be talking about? Little DC?
Little DC, I guess, yes.
Star-shaped,
of course, the Huntress buff. But we don't want to skip the undead, so I kind of did that because I'm so sad.
Star-shaped seemed to have his daily anxiety about what race to choose. He's not complaining, but he seems very confused in the chat channel we have. That's for sure.
Okay. So I hope he plays a lot and the confusion will go away once he actually practices. But with the buff on Huntress, he has to play Night Elves.
Yes.
For me, it's a no-brainer.
Yes, of course.
So
he's been going tier 3 just for the upgrade occasionally. And he almost made it work. I don't remember against whom, but it's a really good. I think it was Orc Worker.
Really?
Yes. Orc Selsing.
Alright.
He teched tier 3 with a priestess first with mass hunts and put up a very decent fight. So yeah, will be interesting. I think this buff. I guess we're going a bit too far now. Let's talk about Undead first.
Yeah. Let's talk about Undead. Scud and my tiers sponsoring the stream as well. because I really think that Undead, I mean, they weren't super strong. It was all a lot of revolving about timings, but there are so many important nerfs in this patch on stuff that the Undead play revolves around, that I'm really curious how the top Undead will play this and how this will affect the lower level as well. But yeah, let's start with the heroes, of course. Frost armor reduced from 5 seconds to 4. I think that's fair.
Let me just find it. There we go. Yes, I think Frost Armor is a boring spell. It's pretty oppressive and it kills my knights. So, no thank you.
Yeah, I think 4 seconds is still good. And
yeah, if you have a unit attacking a unit with Frost Armor, it will still always be frosted.
Yeah.
This only changes the single last attack that the unit gets.
Yeah.
So you have to look at it from that perspective and realize that this is a very, very small nerf.
Yeah, it makes it a little easier to run away, but I mean, if you don't kill the units in 4 seconds, it will mostly survive anyway, so I guess it's all. The whole expansion thing comes up now with the boost on the Acolytes at first, a little more HP regen, 1 armor point, and movement speed. So of course, this is a lot for the Acolytes.
Yeah, that is a lot. And Acolytes were already the strongest one-on-one fighters.
Yeah, that's what it's about, right? Fighting with Acolytes. So of course everybody was complaining that you can't protect them, you can't put them in borders, you can't put them in the mine, so they're always exposed to Stormbolt, Clap, Holy Light, Warden, whatever.
Yeah. It's how much will this change? I guess human against undead in the current meta, you would probably save at least 1 more acolyte per game in like general. When the human, for example, drops his footman with a zeppelin and archmage on the gold mine. So I don't think this is intended to be a change that is applied to the current meta, but as you said, in an undead expand meta, where they are even more vulnerable, and probably a lot more to spells harassing them than to actual units assaulting them. For example, the Warden blinking in with Fan of Knife, the Blizzard in the gold mine, and Breath of Fire and things like that. So I'm thinking specifically on the Blight regeneration, and I guess the buff in HP and the movement speed.
Yeah, movement speed is huge, I think.
Yeah, that's quite a big change. Will that make it an average speed now?
Ooh,
maybe.
Good question. It's half of a boots of speed. That's what I know, but yeah, they should be a lot easier to micro now.
Yeah.
With that change.
And I feel like undeads deserve a change like this. I mean, I don't have anything against it. The Acolytes are really vulnerable. I won't say that they are the most vulnerable worker in the game because I play human. Either way, yes, I'm totally fine with this, and I am open for anything that can make the undead race expand more. And this is definitely a very good step in that direction.
I agree. So we skip a little bit and go to the buildings immediately because it's pretty connected. Haunted Gold Mine, cheaper, little less blight, but I don't think that's an issue at all.
No, probably
Reduced
not.
cost, 30 gold, 10 lumber.
768 blight.
Yeah.
Why do you think that they decided to have it specifically 768, Neil? Tell me.
That's a good question. Wait, I did some numbers. Maybe that helps me here. Maybe it's a percentage thing. Maybe it's flat 20% or so, or 50%. Wait, I got it somewhere here. It's exactly 20% less.
Oh, okay. One of the I just read in our chat, David B881 called the reduced blight a buff, and I didn't think about that.
Ah, because you see it later. Then.
Exactly. That's kind of it.
Ah.
So in some situations, he's right. It might make the expansion go unnoticed.
Yeah, that's true, because you expand the Blight anyway with the Ziggurats and Necropolis.
Yeah.
So for later, that won't change anything. It's just for the early stages of the expansion. I didn't think of that.
No, me neither. Smart guy.
Scoot didn't think of it either.
So is there any reason that this would be a nerf? I mean, you can build less cigarettes on it, but I don't think that would be an issue either way. And you get less, I guess, regeneration space on your units, but that doesn't seem to affect anything.
No, they're cramped up anyway.
Be a buff straight through, almost.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Cool. Does the 30 gold change a lot for the Haunted Gold Mine? I mean, it's helping.
I think from all of the small, tiny changes in costs of things, this one might actually be the one that I think will have the biggest impact. Yeah. It's both the Necropolis and the Haunted Gold Mine.
Yeah. So it's
225 plus 225, 450. It's not that much, actually.
That's true.
How
much does a human expansion cost when you power build it entirely?
I don't know. Probably 2,000, something like that. Okay. 3,000 maybe. Yeah. No, I don't know. It just feels like that. I have no idea, actually. I don't know the rates of increased costs with new peasants. But the thing is, Haunted Gold Mines get cancelled so often, and there's no change here that will make that change. So if you have to build 5 Haunted Gold Mines to get one up, that suddenly turns into a lot more than just 30 gold.
That's true.
So I think this is also, as I said before, any change that promotes expanding undeads is a good change in my opinion, as long as it doesn't go too far. So good change.
Okay. Necropolis buffed as well, as you said, less gold and 10 seconds less build time. I think that's even bigger than the gold change.
Yes. Yeah, I think you are right. Both in the scenario of an undead expanding and the Necropolis just barely not being finished in time to TP. But also, sometimes undeads build a second Necropolis in their main base for building more echoes during tech, or because they are building a build order where they want to save the lumber.
Yeah, it's usually, especially against Night Elf, if you send out the ghoul very, very fast to harass with it.
Exactly. And now with a reduced cost of 30 gold and build duration, I think maybe that opens up for more variation in the build order in that regard too. So I'm interested to see if any undeads develop new build orders which will be optimized for the new change.
That's going to be interesting as well. Like, what can you do with, like, maybe more ghoul pushes with that faster? I don't know. Yeah, that's certainly an option for undeads to work with or to tinker around with.
Yeah, and something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, this is something that we've been like hoping for such a long time, and now it's happening. So that's cool.
Uh-huh.
Same for the Ziggurats. 50 HP doesn't seem to be too much, but they can't be killed by one Zapper anymore with that change. So
okay.
you can get hit by a Zapper but still repair, and that is so important against laming orcs.
Yeah, and that's basically the only time that cigarettes are really an issue. I guess against tanks as well.
Yeah.
But I don't think it really matters there. So the question is, will this... There are some tower rushes.
I was thinking the same.
Yeah, that's like the Lich Fiend tower rush against Orc on small maps, for example. will this change anything? Obviously it will, but will it make the strat actually be used more?
Yeah. I'm gonna talk
Probably not. Sorry, I keep on interrupting you.
I will talk to Enter tomorrow, so maybe he has some insights on that, because I was thinking about that as well. Can you tower rush more? You can certainly tower rush earlier, because Sacrificial Skull no longer requires a graveyard, so you could go for ghoul tower pushes to distract with ghouls
Okay.
and build the towers in the back to establish the tower
Okay.
with the better acolytes, with the better ziggurats. It still will take forever, but
Oh yeah, there's a lot of things
it helps. Yeah.
that comes together. Yes, I didn't even think about the acolytes.
Yeah.
In my opinion, if the undead gets, so let's not talk too much about this because you're going to talk about it with Ente. But if the undead gets his cigarettes up, they usually don't die.
Yeah.
Unless the orc gets demolishers, and then 50 HP isn't really an issue.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Indeed, we will see. So, Fiends, there was a bug where when you burrow the Fiends, the cooldown of Web resets. That is fixed now, so it's a little nerve to Fiends if you play them perfectly, I guess, but this won't affect too much, I guess. It's good that bugs get fixed. Necromancers. A unit, I don't know, nobody plays them. 120 played them against Moon sometime, but that's the only game, I think.
God, this will be so cool.
Really? You think that will change something? Okay, you have to explain that. Why do you think this will change so much?
So let's just quickly go over the changes.
Yeah.
Increased summon duration doesn't really matter in my mind. Holy Frenzy buff, cripple buff, skeletal upgrades are cheaper, and no, more expensive. Sorry.
Yeah, but longer.
More expensive. Okay, but increased duration. Okay. They buffed the HP of the skeletons.
Mm-hmm.
And they nerf all the spell abilities.
Yeah.
I think that this might. Let's think about the human against undead matchup.
Yeah.
So I theorycraft that the human might try to go for tier 2 expansions and then switch to flying machines on tier 2 if need be against destroyers. Imagine the undead going for like a similar kind of tier 2 expansion with the improved expanding capabilities, and then going necromancers. I think maybe I'm just too excited about this stuff, but I know that I have been playing against necromancers, not often, of course not, but I have seen it maybe 1% or 2% of my games against undead recently. So there seemed to be some kind of a minor, not resurgence, but like people are experimenting. Okay. And it always takes me by surprise that it actually isn't as much of a walkover to win against it as I would have expected.
Yeah, because usually, like, on paper, the natural counter is, of course, priest with the spell, but you never go priest against undead, really, and it takes too long to get for the.
But even then, I've been I recall at least 2 matches where I've been playing rifle caster, and I've built like 4 priests, thinking, okay, it's fine, I have priests now. Lol, what are necromancers gonna do? And then I ran out of the spell.
Okay.
And I didn't lose the games, so I can't really say that it's a strong strategy, but with a change in this spell and buffs to these units, maybe I would have lost, is what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Because against the necromancers, mass skeleton spam, you need to have a lot of dispels, and with a cooldown on this spell on priest, was it 5 or 6 seconds?
Yeah, true.
That's I can't really say that I'm going to be scared about against necromancers, but I feel like there might be something here.
Yeah, and
And
like, I think that's already a good thing, that if you think that it's strong and some players prove that it can be done, then you have that option as the undead, and as a human player, you suddenly have to think about the possibility of that. And that is kind of a buff already, you know?
Yeah, you're right. And maybe I said tier 2 under the expansion, but maybe just like a tier 2 push with necromancers.
Yeah, I think that's
And the human,
more likely.
Yeah, and the human doesn't have enough time to get 8 priests, which might be what you actually need. Maybe.
The thing about necromancers is, if that push doesn't work, you kind of lost the game, right? I think we agree on that, because what really comes from the Temple of the Damned? Banshees are of course good, but you will lack damage, I guess.
Yeah.
You need a slaughterhouse anyway for the statues, because the statues are so important.
Yes.
Yeah, that's gonna be, the undeads have to tinker around with that.
But wouldn't a huge caster against caster battle be so epic? Mass skeletons just running in and feeding experience, and the human slowly running out of dispel mana with the nerfed Brilliance Aura as well.
True that.
You have to keep that in mind as well. I didn't even think about that. Which is basically, when you play priests against necromancers, when you run out of mana, you're in trouble. But you don't always do that because Brilliance Aura is so good. So yeah, just I would love to see those kind of epic battles.
Yeah,
tons of skeletons running in.
With that, Skeletal Mastery is now tier 2, not tier 3. So we do have piercing damage from the skeletons, which would be better against casters, of course.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, so that's pretty big as well. It's like the every race has like one upgrade that goes from tier 3 to tier 2. This is the undead's thing.
Oh, okay.
I would have loved to see the destroyer upgrade there, but who am I?
Yeah. Okay. I'm hanging up on you now. Goodbye. It was nice talking with you.
Yeah.
I realized that you're a Looney Tune now.
Nah, of course. That was just me joking, but yeah. I mean, that is the upgrade that we see the least, and it's not super strong, I guess. Puts more versatility into the army. It's okay. Yeah. I'm really surprised what Enter's saying tomorrow about this, all of this.
Yeah, can I just quickly go over the Unholy Frenzy and Cripple changes?
Of course.
I don't know how much time we have on your end.
I have, like, the entire evening.
Okay, good. I won't use it all, but and I don't have to feel pressured about time. Anyways, I know that when Doak played a bit more, he did a minor comeback a couple months ago and then stopped playing again. He and Scott, to some minor extent, but mostly Doak, experimented a lot with necromancers against Orc. Mainly for Cripple and Unholy Frenzy, not for skeletons.
Okay.
And I feel like Cripple, in theory, is such an imbalanced spell. In practice, it's not.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you played. I played a decent amount of League of Legends, and in that game, there's a spell basically, which is very similar to Cripple. It's called Exhaust, which reduces attack damage and attack speed and movement speed and all that. And it's not nearly as powerful when it comes to reduced stats as Cripple, but it's still a really, really good spell. And putting Cripple on a hero like the Blade Master is basically rendering him useless. It's basically the Cyclone spell.
Yeah. Just for the guys who are not too familiar with Cripple, it's 75% movement speed debuff, 50% attack speed debuff, and 50% damage debuff as well, I guess. So that's a lot. Like, we see how much difference a curse does with a 30% mischance of 33, and Cripple is way above curse.
Yeah. So I think there is some experimenting to be done there. With the Unholy Frenzy buff, that's not really a big thing, I think.
I think on Lich and Fiends it can be really good.
Yeah, I mean, the change is that it drains 1 less HP.
Okay, that, yeah. But in general, it's a good spell, I think.
Yeah, I think it's underused because the Necromancer isn't really that good.
Yeah.
But now that you can afford 2 cripples on a full HP, I guess if you were only going for Necromancers for Unholy Frenzy and Cripple, these changes don't really make that too much better.
Yeah.
Reduced mana cost on Cripple and slightly better Unholy Frenzy, so maybe I'm getting too carried away here. But I still really like the theory behind the Cripple the Blade Master strategy.
Yeah, I agree. So, could it somehow be possible to use a Necro push early tier 2 to establish your own expansion, then go tier 3 and use Cripple with some other upgrades you get with your expansion gold?
In Undead against Orc?
Yeah, or against human, I don't know, wherever.
Yeah.
Not against Night Elf, obviously, because wisps, but...
Uh-huh. Yeah, Cripple. I'm not too sure about what the Undead against Human meta will be like.
Yeah.
If it is the standard Knights, Griffins kind of thing, Cripple is obviously very good.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can beat Necromancers even in the standard meta with that kind of style, but it's still not really used. Maybe, I mean, you have to take into consideration so many of these changes.
Yeah, true.
Such
Everything
as the fragmentation
will change,
charts change as well,
True.
and mortar teams change, because that is a deadly enemy to the Necromancer.
That's true.
But and to the skeletons as well. So maybe that change also kind of has the power to push necromancers a little bit further and not make them broken, but make them hopefully usable. That's my hope.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting that you see them more powerful. I still think we won't see them, but let's hope for the 120s, WFZs, and Happies of this world to show that this is possible. Or some new guys. It's good. Come up with something.
It's about time.
What
are you doing?
So Obsidian Statue and Destroyer nerfed across the board, 50 HP less. Orb of Annihilation reduced by 25%, and the Dispel against summons, it's 20 damage less.
Yes.
So big nerf to Destroyers, I think.
Destroyers are really
fucked.
In a vacuum, they are really imbalanced against human. Like human only have Wind Riders, and even then they are not necessarily countered. It's situational. But still, as much as it kind of hurts for me to say this, I don't think that they were really imbalanced.
No.
And I think these changes might be too much in combination with the Flying Machines buff. Because there was a kind of beautiful dance between Flying Machines and Destroyers, where you try to lure the Destroyers into spending all the mana and flying away and dancing against the Breath of Fire and possibly Carrion Swarm, and it was really micro-intensive and I think fun to watch and exciting.
Yeah, I love that.
And I just hope that this doesn't completely go away. Maybe if it changes things up and makes it a little bit lopsided towards the human, that doesn't necessarily have to be bad. But I still would like to see them being used.
Yeah, from my thinking is that we can't play Destroyer anymore the way we played them before. The 5 damage from the Orb of Annihilation, I think it's also pretty big against towers as well. And 50 HP. 50 HP is okay to me, but the damage buff, and especially less damage against summons unit as well against the Water Elementals, that will hit Undead versus Human pretty hard. Pretty hard, and I don't see them working anymore.
So, the thing about Destroyers is that they are so on or off. If they don't have any mana, they are not that impressive. Five food deal. What is it? 24 damage.
Yeah. It's like a walker.
Yeah,
It's like Spirit Walker.
Basically, but with mana they are deadly, and that's
Yeah.
that's not necessarily bad. It's an interesting consideration into the all destroyer matchups, basically.
Yeah, I think you can play around it, like you said. Like, of course, it hits you super hard when you have 4 destroyers against you and they all have mana. But
Yeah.
if you survive that, then the game is basically on your side, and that was kind of the key in this matchup, to learn how to survive those pushes.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier that might be very hard for new players.
Yeah.
So, of course, Blizzard has to consider the playing experience for all players, not just for the top competitors and the spectators. So
there was a question I got on Discord. Will we see more frost worms now that destroyers are nerfed?
Frost worms are used against Orc and Night Elf, and in Mirror.
Yeah.
At least against human.
Yeah.
Will they be used against human? I don't necessarily think so. No,
me neither.
I don't think they replace the Destroyer. They have such different roles. Destroyer is really good because something we didn't touch on is you can make so many statues and then kind of boom into a 20 supply more army.
Yeah.
And you can build your destroyers halfway. I mean, in the state of a statue.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get the upgrade, you immediately have 6, 7 tier 3 units.
Yes.
And that is the way they are most of the way used against humans. And Frostworms won't be able to replace that. And I think Frostworms against Orc, Undead, and maybe an Undead Mirror, actually.
Okay.
Maybe an Undead Mirror. Because that's a place where destroyers are used in decent amount, I think. I'm no expert.
Yeah, we had a lot of destroyer wars. That is pretty boring, of course, since nobody can attack each other. But
yeah, and that's a place where this change will have a lot of impact, I think. And maybe Frostworms will take that role, which would make that kind of battle more interesting, because the Frostworms can attack Frostworms. So
that's true.
Something
on
to
the other
look out
side,
for.
they are so expensive, and you can web them down and focus.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a nerf on the Frostworm as well. Frost Breath attack duration on heroes from 10 seconds to 3 seconds, so...
Holy moly, was it really 10 seconds?
Yeah, right? I was baffled as well, but
God.
That's of course way too long. The Night Elves will be happy about that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I know that it felt like forever, but I didn't know that it actually was forever.
It was forever.
Oh my god.
That will help. I mean, 10 seconds is too long. Against human units, it should still be that long. But alright. I think this will only affect the matchup against Night Elf, and there it's fair, I guess.
Yeah.
So what would you say, how is Undead playing against human now? What can they do?
Oh, such a hard question.
Yeah.
Because, okay, let's speculate that the human still goes tier 3, still fast expands.
Yeah.
Because they didn't really, I mean, we didn't really receive any nerfs to that.
Yeah.
Just small things. Brynja's aura, improved masonry and such. Destroyers were always, even in games they weren't used, a threat, simply because of the fact that you could immediately have them. You always have 2 statues. Suddenly, you might be attacked by 3 destroyers, so you have to have a decent amount of towers. Even
and you
if
spend, of course, resources on those
fiends,
towers, yes.
which is very popular these days, and don't get any destroyers, the lessened threat of destroyers might make fiends easier to deal with in extension. So I think that, I mean, it's goes without saying that this is a huge buff to human against undead, but not necessarily game breaking, because these days so many undeads goes for fiends and wagons and pressure you without destroyers. Maybe just 1 or 2 for dispel, but not for pushing.
Right.
So
you say there is hope for the undead.
Yeah.
Especially with the threat of necromancers now.
Exactly. Maybe that's the new destroyer threat.
Yeah, maybe it is.
But it's hard to say how much. I mean, we're talking as if the destroyers were going to be useless.
Yeah.
Which is not going to be the case. 5 damage, 20 to 15 is a 25% damage decrease.
Yeah.
But they also have their normal damage of 25 damage. So it's not actually a 25 damage decrease to destroyers.
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
More like a 12.5-ish, 12. So it's not as bad as it looks, maybe. We'll see.
Okay. There is some changes to upgrades, Cannibalize especially, so it's faster now. I like that because it just takes forever to use Cannibalize, and then your unit is like immobile, can't be used for scouting, can't be used for fighting. Do you think we will see Cannibalize now as it's faster?
This is a huge buff to the undead campaign. Actually.
Is the balance affected? Is the campaign affected? I don't think so.
Yeah, probably not.
I don't
that
think
would be
so,
too
no.
hard to make sure that it's... yeah. But that's the last time I saw someone use Cannibalize, basically.
Yeah, I think so too.
But this is, I mean, this is a change that is very welcome. It's a spell that's not used on units which are not used that often. So why not? Why not just test the waters and see if it makes them better?
Okay. Disease Cloud, 2 times the DPS now. Will this change a lot? It's only for Abomination, so it's not for the Disease Cloud of of Wagons.
Oh, okay. Otherwise, it would be quite a change to Undead Against Human.
Yeah.
This probably then mostly affects Undead Against Night Elf.
Yeah, for the Dryads, I guess.
The Dryads, which are already very weak to Disease Cloud, now take a bit more damage. And if you go Rifle Caster,
yes,
which, I mean, I brought it up a couple of times because I like the strat, but it's not really something that human tend to play a lot. Yeah, I don't really know how much this will affect any matchup.
I think it's good because it was like quite weak and didn't barely cancel the health regen or neutralize the health regen, so it's a bit better now, and there's more reasons to go for it, and I like that change. It's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, you're right. It's a step in the right direction.
Yeah,
for sure.
Orb of Corruption down from 5 to 4. That's also like the third big thing here for Undead.
Yeah.
This will like at least 6% less damage on every shot of that unit or on that unit. That's huge.
Yeah, but something tells me that this is a change that feels a lot bigger than it actually is. I still think the orb will be a really good orb and used a lot.
Yes.
And when I see 5 to 4, it's, if I was Undead player, I would really, really hurt inside. But and it's a big change, but
we've seen this change at Fury Fire before. Fury Fire was 5 before, now it's 4 minus armor. So it's basically the same. It's still strong, of course, but Fury Fire was never as like the Undead play revolves around this orb. So maybe you're right. Maybe I'm once again overreacting that this is big. Because I would have loved to see 4.5. Like
you
5
would have
is
to see a buff.
no. I do think that the Orb of Corruption is too strong. That's of course like Everybody knows that, I guess.
Mhm.
But maybe that's too much. Maybe 4.5 would be better.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't like
When I
uneven numbers. I don't know.
yeah, exactly. Maybe they don't like the numbers.
Yeah.
I can't put my finger on it, and when I think about it logically, it feels like a big buff, but it's nerf. But there's something telling me that it's not as bad as we think it is. Just a hunch, so I can't explain it. But we'll
we have to do some calculations, like how much of like one army volley, how much less damage that is, or something. Some math geniuses amongst the community can pretty well do it, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's the undead. I think like big question marks here.
But what about the exhumed corpse now generates Crypt Fiend corpse instead of Ghoul corpse?
That is
the biggest change of them all.
Oh man, that is the biggest change. I wanted to save it for later, or for
buff
for last.
For the dreaded Meatwagon animate dead combo. But oh my god, that's basically the only implication of this change, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so let's move on. Close that chapter.
All right, down with the undead. Now Night Elves. When I read those change logs for Night Elf, I think, okay, they want to change Night Elf because it's all cookie cutter builds in all matchups, basically. So they want to give them more tools, but they don't have a philosophy on Night Elf. They don't really know what they want them to play, but they give them all the tools, make everything a little better that is not used, make everything a little weaker that is used a lot. And then, okay, let's see where Night Elf goes from here.
I think the first change of the Demon Hunter, I think if a Night Elf player loses his Demon Hunter when he is in Metamorphosis, I don't think he deserves another Metamorphosis, to be honest. That's, yeah, that's pretty awkward if you lose your Demon Hunter in the best spell of the game. So
that is correct. Yeah, I think it's good they reduced the agility by 1. I mean, Demon Hunter and Blade Master are kind of imbalanced on level 1 because they have so much more stats than all the other heroes. So reducing that is cool. Metamorphosis, of course, nice to see a 15-second nerf. It's interesting that they don't touch on the skill itself, but only on the duration.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty fair. It's a spell that feels like it's. I mean, let's take for example Human against Night Elf when the Archmage is level 6 and the Demon Hunter is level 6. You can just TP away most of the time. I mean, use your level 6 Archmage spell, Mass Teleport. But it still feels like the next fight, which he will try to find quite soon, he will still be in the Metamorphosis. It feels like it lasts quite some time, and I don't think the actual spell needs help. I mean, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I think it's not a bad change.
Yeah, I agree.
Because the spell by itself needs to be pretty strong.
It's an ultimate, right? It should be strong.
Yeah.
It's just that the other ultimates are weak, right? So
yeah,
I agree. And you can play around it, as you said, just TP out or whatever. The thing now is the cooldown uptime is a lot longer now with those 15 seconds subtracted from Metamorphosis.
Yeah, this spell has quite a big cooldown, doesn't it? So
you have to think more, okay, is it time to use it now, or will he just TP away and then I have 90-second cooldown or something, or where I can't use it, and what can my opponent do from that point on when I don't have my Metamorphosis? So I like it. It's a good change.
Yep. I think so too.
Force of Nature reduced to 100. Still, I don't know.
I don't know about you, but I always feel so. I mean, it's only in my head, but like using trees as the source of your summons feels like there's a limited supply of summons. And in practice, there isn't really such a thing. But I always feel so bad destroying the trees, getting the treants,
Yeah.
because it feels like, oh, if I actually needed to use these trees in a different state of the game, they won't be there anymore. Did you ever feel like that?
Not at all.
Okay, maybe it's just me. Anyways,
But I kind of see your criticism. Like, if you're, like, let's say, in the big part of Amazonia where there's nothing around you, then you can't use that spell,
yeah,
for example.
you have to walk 5 seconds and then
Yeah.
5 seconds back.
And the treants are not that good, so.
Yeah, you're right. Didn't they get buffed in the previous patch as well?
They did, yes. But I still think, like, they have no special ability, they don't have crit, they don't have, they're not super tanky as the water elementals were, they don't have, like, vision as the hawk has, they don't have bloodlust as the quilby, they have nothing, they're just boring right-clickers.
Yeah.
And they are not that strong for that, so they don't have a second value. And whenever I feel like, or see that just mana costs are reduced from a spell that isn't used, I think it's, I don't want to call it lazy, but it won't change too much because the other stuff is still way better.
Yes and no in some ways. I see a lot of games where the opposing player has like one single unit, maybe a hero, that is melee, and everything else is ranged.
Yeah.
But the Night Elf player still goes for Thorzain.
Yes.
And I think that's mostly because they don't have the mana for both Treants and Entangle.
Yeah.
So Keeper of the Grove he's already a hero that gets completely nullified by the spell, which is gonna be nerfed this patch. So that's one thing to look out for. But he's basically a one spell hero most of the time.
I agree.
So I think this is a step in the right direction.
Okay.
It's interesting to me. Two of the spells that Night Elf has that are very seldom used are Force of Nature and Immolation.
Mm-hmm.
And both of these spells scale very poorly. So you have level 1 Force of Nature gives you 2 treants. Level 2 Force of Nature gives you 3 of the same treants.
Yeah.
It doesn't double like a Death Coil, 100 damage to 200 damage, like a Stormbolt. It, like most spells, somewhat double. Not all spells, but many spells. And I think that is a reason for it, why, for example, Immolation is really bad. It deals 10 damage and then 15 and then 20, I think.
Okay.
I think you could upgrade level 2 and 3 of Force of Nature and make it actually a viable spell.
Okay, so you think that 2 treants is okay to start things with?
Yes, but in the situation where you are level 2 on your Keeper, the treants are just a very poor unit.
Yeah, I agree.
Because at that stage of the game, you won't have big battles where you can just A-move, basically. And they are slow, doesn't have any special abilities, just as you said.
Yeah, so my guess is that we see more changes to treants in the future.
I hope so. I hope so.
So, units, upgrades, and items. Pretty interesting stuff in there, to be honest. Starting with archers, a little more HP. Is there some kind of, like, do they survive something now with those 15 more, or? I don't really know.
I don't really think so. This is only a change for Knight of Mirror and Knight of Legacy Undead, I think.
Yeah.
Mostly Knight of Mirror, probably. Which I'm not too comfortable. I don't feel too comfortable discussing in depth.
Okay.
So I don't really know what implications this will have.
Neither.
But I don't think it's a big change.
Maybe it's just for helping in the early game a little, because Night Elves are quite vulnerable there, especially on lower levels. So this will help.
But it does, as you said, open up for the Night Elf player to build something else than Dryads and Bears.
Yeah.
because there has been experimentations with the archer style builds against undead, for example, where you get a big advantage in the early game, maybe a keeper and expand, and then you have a lot of archers and add some dryads and maybe druids of the talents. And the problem there is the nuke of the undead, which just destroys archers.
Yeah, maybe they survive some nuke a little better now. In general, it's easier.
It's hard. It's really hard to count because they have the innate magic reduction as well.
Elune's Grace, exactly.
Yeah.
Why is there no icon for that, by the way? I know that Blizzard is listening right now, so please make an icon for Elune's Grace so people know.
There isn't.
No, there isn't.
Oh yeah, it's
just a passive they have, but it's nowhere mentioned.
Are you sure?
I'm 100% sure.
Oh. Okay, because I feel pretty sure about the opposite, but not 100% sure, so I'll take your word for it.
Icon is in the list? Ah, okay. On the list. Nice. Thanks. So they're working on it. So,
okay.
Huntress star shape upgrade here. Sentinel.
Yes. That's kind of cool that they have a special starship patch. Kinda.
Indeed. Sentinel research by default. Moonglaves available at tier 2. Pretty cool.
Yes, I think the Moonglaive upgrade is... I've actually talked about this change previously with my friends. And there seems to me to be no reason to have it a tier 3 ability, while having it on tier 2 makes a lot of sense, actually. It's like... It's not the best of abilities. It doesn't really add that much. I don't know how much more percent damage it deals, but not enough to be worth tech to tier 3 just for that. And you don't use hunters as a tier 3 anyways, so... But you still have a lot of them left at tier 2.
Yeah.
So really cool, really cool.
I really like that versus human especially, because sometimes you want to push early, but then you see, okay, that push didn't really work, but I'm still having my Huntress here. I kind of have to tech late to tier 2. And against that, or harassing peasants, Huntress could be so much better now. Especially against expansions, I guess. When there's a lot of repair, you still have Huntress and the glaives attack the peasants there. I think they actually have use.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know where to put this change, because there's not really any time where you are tier 2 and have Huntresses, except for maybe what you just described.
Yeah.
But this is an incentive to actually tech. And I'm looking forward to what players like Starship will figure out, because I think there's some potential here.
Muffy Supergozo says, Mass Hunters were inferior versus Orc. Now with Moonglades, it's more balanced. You will see more Beastmaster mass hunts against Orc. Absolutely possible. With Hunters against Raiders, if it bounces one more.
Yes.
That should be a lot more damage.
Yes, but the bounces aren't... It's not gonna deal 33% more damage, because the bounces aren't...
Yeah, they're a little weaker, right? The longer
yes,
they
and
bounce.
the third is even weaker, I think.
Yeah.
So it's not that big of a damage increase, but it's a damage increase nonetheless.
Yeah. What do you think about Sentinel? Like, it's research by default, so you have, like, you don't have to spread your wisps too much, you can just put a Sentinel.
That's the biggest, like, when you play Huntresses, for example, against Orc, and you tech to most of the time lores, but then occasionally the Ancient of Winds. Having, I guess you only get 2 or 3 hunts.
Yeah.
The Sentinel ability being researched by default will be used a lot in this situation.
I agree.
And it's... I think it's a pretty cool ability, so... And I don't think it will make any matchup imbalanced in any way, so I approve of this change. I guess there's not really that much to say about it.
Starshaped actually was worried that it's too strong.
Too strong?
Yes. And
Why?
will
It costs what, 100.
it's research
And
by
if it
default.
wasn't
so- Yeah.
if it wasn't strong before, how would 100 make it too strong?
Yeah, I don't know, but he said, yeah, everybody's gonna abuse it, and it's so strong. You have so much vision.
Okay, but Starship has his own theories about everything, so
Indeed.
but he has a lot of good points actually.
Yeah, that's
But I
true.
don't think the Sentinel will be overpowered.
It
No.
was fun to talk to, of course. So, oops, I showed something wrong here. This goes kind of hand in hand with the glaive throw increase, 33% more damage. And
Okay.
it's
That's
pretty.
not.
Yeah, that's a lot, but they were so weak before. I think it's okay. Maybe a little too strong. Maybe 25 would have been enough.
When I stopped playing Warcraft back in 2010, I think, maybe, yeah, anyways, back in that time period, a lot of Night Elves would play Warden into fast expansion, one AoE Huntresses,
Okay.
into one lore for Dryads, and two AoEs Mass Glaive Throwers.
Okay.
Remind used to play this a lot. Soccer played this a lot. Moon played this a lot. This was a strategy that was very popular in Korea and Asia, and I don't know, Lil DC played it a lot, and he traveled to China and beat players like I think maybe TH Infi with it. Don't you remember?
Not really, no.
It wasn't like a strat that you would see every 40th game, but like every other game in
Okay.
Human against Night Elf for a limited time. I'm so scared that this massive buff in damage will bring back that strategy because I lost every single game against it. So
What's so hard about it?
Glaive Throwers just destroyed everything that I had basically because they rushed the +2 attack damage and they would have an early expansion with the Warden to defend it.
Okay.
And then continuously push, so I couldn't really get a 70 supply army. They kept me down at like 50, 60 maybe, and had 8 glaive throwers and dryads for the spell. And it just glaive throwers never really feel that good, except for in that particular style when they would just deal so much damage with the upgrade. What's it called?
Vorpal blades, right?
Ah, yes, probably yes.
Yeah,
I
with
recognize
Vorpal
that.
blades, they're pretty good. And now that could be sick.
Yeah, and that strategy fell out of fashion for a reason. It wasn't. It was replaced by better strategies, but this is a huge damage increase, so it might still have a place in the game.
Looking forward to that. Really can't remember actually. What I want to connect with the glaive thrower and huntress thing here is the buff on edge protectors. It's quite a bit more damage. And reduced build time. So everything for a protector push is buffed significantly.
Yes, I'm immediately thinking about the tier 2 Night Elf against Orc push.
Yes.
With the 2, maybe 3, 4 huntresses, a keeper as a second or a first hero. And then the Nature's Blessing, you build the Ancients of Protectors outside of the base, and you walk in 4 of them and hope that they were unscouted.
Yes. This could totally be a foggy thing to do.
Yep, this will be. It's already is a strat that you kind of have to scout to stop, or not necessarily, but it's really really hard to stop if you don't scout it in time. And with this buff, I think it will be obviously even more so.
Yeah.
But I'm not so sure what happens if the orc actually gets to scout it. Maybe it doesn't really change things too much.
Yeah, Blade Master could still hack and slay them away, right?
Yeah, that's true. What other implications could there be?
In that matchup?
Again will be a bit sad because he can't make his beloved gargoyles in the same way as before. But other than that,
it's not too much damage on the anti-air. Oh yeah, it is in the anti-air as well. It's just the uprooted attack. Yeah, true.
So maybe against human with the Mass Huntress's AP push against fast expansions, considering that militia time duration is nerfed, glaive throwers buffed. What else? Water elementals changed. Brilliance aura nerfed. Masonry changed. There's a lot of small things that might.
Dispel changed of Dryad, so you don't have to go for them maybe, but you search for another alternative.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about Tier 1 punish the Expo with the initially two AoEs hunts into AP push.
Yeah, okay, I get it.
That is a build that already is used every once in a while. And it's just going to be stronger. But I don't think it was overpowered before, just situational, and if the human was greedy. But this is something that the human player has to be even more aware of these days. So maybe a good change.
Yeah, I think this is actually very good changes and opens up the toolbox for Night Elves quite a bit with those changes. Yeah, but everything that is used right now gets nerfed. Talents more expensive. 15 gold only, but you produce them in masses, so it will add up.
Do you think this change will affect the meta of Night Elf against Orc?
Hard to say.
If it was the only change.
Yeah. I don't think it would change the meta, no. They would make it harder for Night Elf and a little more fair to a point that you can't mass talents too much throughout the entire game.
So you think that Night Elf had an advantage against Orc?
Yes.
Okay.
If you play it like Foggy, then yes.
Okay.
If you play it like the Koreans, a little slower and less aggressive, then no.
Okay. It's a big change for sure. Then again, I'm not too familiar with the matchups. Yeah. So
I think this will help Orc, of course. So this, especially since when there's a big fight and everybody is down to 40 supply, then there's 35 supply. There's no way for Orc to catch up with the production of talent. Yeah. So now when everything is a little more expensive and you have to get the items, so you need to have gold. It's a pretty hard nerf for that.
Yeah. Then again, in the same way as the Mortar team's nerf, this is a unit that is not exclusively used against Orc, but has its majority of uses against Orc. Sometimes against all other races, but not too often. So they seem to agree with you that there is an issue with the Druid of the Talon style, because it would make no sense to nerf the Druids if they didn't think that, in my opinion, because it's going to affect Night Elf against Orc matchup so much. So did they give the Night Elf something else in return? Archers and Huntresses. That's not really going to be the answer, I think, against Orc.
Mountain Giants?
Yeah, okay. That's actually a big change. I didn't see that. 75 gold less.
Yeah.
One less supply.
Do you think that's big? I feel like that won't change anything.
I think I agree with you. The upgrades are too expensive.
And too late, I think.
And too late.
Yeah. That's the problem.
And I think the build time of the Mountain Giant is pretty hefty, isn't it?
Yeah, they take forever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that won't change too much. The abolish magic change won't change too much as well. I think it's just what we have across the board. Hippogriff taming is research by default. Will this will there be a timing for Night Elf to use that when there's no anti-air or something? Or where you can harass so much with them that it's actually working out? This is... I don't know.
I could see maybe if you still go for talents against Orc and you have your remaining archer, why not build one Hippogriff Rider?
Okay.
For I don't know what for, but just for the style points, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, nice.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a cool it's a thematically very cool unit. And I can't believe that they actually have almost 800 HP. Is that correct?
Yeah,
That sounds
780.
like that's a lot of HP. Why aren't they good?
Because they don't deal damage at all.
Yeah. I think they need to have like more range or something.
Yeah.
One more range, maybe.
Yeah. One more? That won't change too much. But yeah, I agree with you. Won't change too much for Hippogriffs. Chimeras, little less splash. I don't think that will do too much. But with the Chimera Roost being more accessible, like on paper, this seems to be a good change. But when do you ever see Chimeras when there's no Fury Dragons, for example, or no Hippogriffs? You always have that, right?
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, you have the option now to rush.
You can't.
Yeah, obviously, but
basically.
Yeah, but like, of course you're forced to, but you could just build it and then build no Furies or build no Hippos, you know?
Yeah.
But against human, you have the Furies, and then when it's like a 30-minute game, you come up with the idea, okay, maybe a Roost would be good to crack that expansion or something. You have the option to rush Chimeras now, but it still takes forever.
I can't think of a situation where I see this being very usable right now, but I'm pretty sure that there are situations like what you describe.
Chat is saying in Bear Mirror.
Exactly. I didn't think about that one.
Chat knows it all.
Yeah, that's obviously where chimeras would be really good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's pretty cool. It would be kind of human text to tier 3 in Mirror. Makes things a lot more interesting. It's a risk though. And
what did you say? Human tech?
Like it's comparable to the human Mirror tier 3 tech where you have a better army, but you take that risk to make that tech.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Should make for
but
more
this
interesting.
Going to be a big investment because the Chimera Roost is not expensive, really. It's not cheap, but
it takes time, though.
Yeah, I guess that's it.
And if your opponent uses that time to build 2 more bears or something, and maybe a heal scroll or so, they might win a fight if you can force it.
Yeah. I know that there's a lot of times where I get a bit caught off by the Chimera timing when I play human against Night Elf. But then again, you already said that they already want the Ancient of Wind anyways. So probably doesn't change much there. Could it change anything against Undead?
I don't think so. Web is just too strong, right?
Yeah. Maybe you go Chimeras against the mass Necros.
When I hit you with Necros on tier 2, you have no time to go for Chimera. No chance.
Yeah, we'll see.
So Night Elf coming out. Oh, we forgot the Moonwell change. From 1.25 mana to 1.5 mana per second at night.
Yeah, as the many other changes, a small buff. I mean, not too much to say about it. Helps defend pushes. I mean, it helps in every way that Moonwell helps, of course.
It's quite surprising to me that they buff Moonwells, because it's like free healing almost all the time. It's interesting. I thought this is one of the strongest things that Night Elf has, especially with the staff synergy that we see over and over. But okay, they seem to think that it's not enough. I mean, they don't have a scroll of regen, they don't have healed cells or whatever, so they need that, of course. They are reliant on it, I understand that.
Yeah, and there's some weird changes coming up in the neutral heroes as well.
Alright, so let's go to the neutral heroes here. You can't wait to talk about it, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't mean to rush things. I just meant
no,
that...
it's fine.
Yeah,
it's super interesting.
There's not... Movements aren't the only weird change.
Okay, so we start with the Alchemist. I think the winner of patch 1.29 got his healing decreased 10 per wave on each level. I think it's not too much. It was strong. It is still strong. It's not OP. The big thing here is, I guess, the combination of Heal Spray and Brilliance Aura nerf.
Yeah, the thing about Heal Spray is that there's no cooldown, which is pretty weird in my opinion. And I think that's what really makes it a strong spell. And in some ways, because of that, you didn't theoretically need to get it. I mean, you did get it. You did upgrade it to level 2 when you could, but a level 1 healing spray was still really good because you could cast it 3-4 times and still get a lot of healing out of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it wasn't about trying to out heal your opponent dealing damage. In some cases, yes, but not always. A lot of time it was about basically just healing up your army taking AoE damage or A move damage and not sustained focus fire. And in that regard, 40 to 30 is a pretty big change, I think. So I think that the Goblin Alchemist actually takes quite a hit with this at the early levels. And I think that isn't such a bad thing because he's a hero that scales well and starts off strong.
Yeah.
And he always has his acid bomb either way, so I mean you don't have to go for level 1 healing spray. I didn't really like... I like that they made him playable, but I'm not a big fan of him spamming healing spray.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make for exciting games.
It was quite dull, I agree. But I do think the big issue was the combination of Alchemist and Brilliance Aura, because he could just do it across the entire game. Whenever he wanted, he always had mana. Now I don't see that anymore. Like, not too much.
Yeah, maybe.
Or what would you like? You would like to see a bigger nerf on Heal Spray, or?
I mean, this obviously is a scaling. The opposite. It's a nerf to early game Alchemist, because level 1 is a 25% change and level 3 is a whatever that is change. Let's never do maths on stream, I learned back in my days.
Correct.
Sorry, I forgot the question.
Would you nerf them like the Heal Spray even further?
Oh yes. So what I was going to bring up is that the level 1 Brilliance Aura. I mean, we already touched that. Yeah. Level 1 Brilliance Aura isn't really nerfed. Only it isn't nerfed, and level 2 is somewhat nerfed, and level 3 is a lot. Majorly nerfed.
Yeah, but we don't see that.
So at the stage where you would have a level 1 healing spray, you probably wouldn't have a level 2 Brilliance Aura.
Yeah, true.
So this change of the Alchemist, which is primarily targeted at his earlier levels, could even that out in some regard, so that he is affected in the way that you're saying by the Brilliance Aura once he is level 3 or 4. But by then, his nerf to the healing spray isn't as big, so he won't be useless.
True.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So that's like a very good balancing then. If I get you correctly.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think this puts him in a pretty good spot.
Yeah.
I like it.
Until he hits level 6, because that
Oh
change
boy, oh
is
boy.
absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, but it was already pretty bonkers ability, so this just fortifies it as one of the stronger ones in the game.
It's so
Not
crazy.
the strongest, but at least the top 5 maybe.
It's so like unrealistic. Let's say you build a tank and you drive across Twisted Meadows forever, and then you have that used tank, and the alchemist comes in and gets more gold from selling it than you paid for it at the first place. What kind of what is that? Like,
I don't know, man.
I have no idea why they did that. As you said as well, transmute especially in like matches where there's no gold mine anymore. Yes. One of the strongest ultimates together with charm, and buffing that by 4.5% or whatever that is factor. I don't know. I really don't know. I would love to know why they did that.
Yeah, I don't see why, but then again, it's an ultimate, so it's not really going to be an issue, I think.
Yeah, true. And then there's going to be this one game where we will just be complaining and complaining. Yes, of course. So, Tinker next, I guess?
Yes, that is one of the changes I was talking about when I mentioned weird changes.
Okay.
So Tinker has been used recently a bit by human players against Night Elf, essentially. And it has the classic use of the third hero in Night Elf against Orc. And I guess Undead uses it against Night Elf sometimes. Happy likes it, for example. Does it have any other uses than that?
Not really,
Not
right?
that I can think of. I know Effect likes to play it against Orc, but it's just what he likes as a third hero. But he's quite massively nerfed here, I feel like.
I don't know, like one armor isn't too much, I think.
Yeah, and I guess I just saw that there was a lot of changes, but they aren't really that big, maybe.
No. I don't know if it's a nerf or a buff that the Pocket Factory has heavy armor instead of normal.
Yes,
I have no idea if that's good or bad.
It's a... Yeah, what is it?
I don't know what it is.
Maybe it's just because I was thinking maybe it's a buff against Orc, but then again the Spirit Walkers will do a lot of damage to it.
Yeah.
And I guess
it's a nerf for you.
No, it's a nerf because the Raiders deal more damage to it as well now, and the monster is I guess unaffected. So it's a nerf against Orc.
It's a nerf against human because Footman and Militia can't attack it that easy. Like, it doesn't get the extra damage.
So that would make it a buff. If Footman doesn't get the extra damage.
Yeah.
But then again, well, first of all, it's never really seen against human.
Yeah.
And there's all these casters and mortars and things to keep in mind as well.
So yeah, it's most likely
it's a buff. Right? It's a nerf, against Night Elf 2 when the Undead plays it against Dryads. Because you can actually focus fire it down pretty easily.
True. Yeah, true.
And human against Night Elf. It's a new strategy that's basically only played on Twisted Meadows, so not sure. And I never played it. But interestingly enough, they buffed cluster rockets
again.
But I see that it's only at level 3 now.
Yeah.
And I don't think it holds up on early levels to make it useful, even with the previous buff.
Yeah, it's again one of those cases where Pocket Factory and engineering fit so well together and are so strong that whatever you do with cluster rockets, I don't know, they don't see a reason to go for cluster rockets.
Yeah,
Except
and
for
I
the
think,
Luls, yeah.
I think Cluster Rockets is a dangerous spell in that if you give it too much damage, it might very easily become pretty oppressive because it has a really low cooldown. So it's basically limited by the Tinker's mana pool.
Yeah.
And he has a lot of intelligence, so he always has a lot of mana. So the spell is basically pretty sustained damage up until the point where he loses mana. Somewhat similar to Thunderclap. And if you buff it so that it's comparable in damage to other AoE spells, and it's a ranged spell on a hero with a lot of intelligence, it might very easily become too strong.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I realize why they are very careful. But maybe give it another percentage or two of damage,
Okay.
in my opinion.
Okay. I don't have too much experience with that, so I have no real opinion on it, but do you think the engineering upgrade will, like, it's of course nerf slightly, so
Yeah.
clock works less, like, take more time. Was it necessary?
Hard to tell. I never used the Tinker and I never saw him as a problem. And they nerfed Night Elf against Orc in so many other ways.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure that nerfing a neutral unit would, or hero rather, would be necessary. But I'm sure Blizzard has some thought processes behind their decisions. So.
Okay, let's hope for the best. I felt like the Tinker was too strong recently if you look at how Infi and TH play him, so nerfing him a little seems to be a good idea. By the way, we forgot something at the Night Elf side, the Engine of War changes, which are quite big, so we don't forget about them. Let's do them now.
I think it's just a side note. Why do they put it as reduced bonus attack damage?
I have no idea.
What's the bonus part?
I don't know.
Okay, so it's a nerf from 1000 HP to 900 and quite a hefty damage nerf.
Yeah.
It's a big nerf, but I have a hard time seeing the implications of the nerf. They might be big and they might be small. It's hard to tell, in my opinion.
Bonus is when uprooted. Okay, I think it's to slow down Engine of War creeping.
Ah.
To make it more even for orcs and undead to creep, I guess. So they hit militia for that reason, maybe as well, to make them more like killable or whatever, and they nerfed Night Elf on that side.
I didn't even think about that. All I kept thinking about was Night Elf trying to defend some kind of a push. But that is both. I mean, that is the biggest impact of this change.
Yeah. So it will slow down.
I don't know. Do I like it? Hell yes.
Yeah, it always was pretty strong, and now that the Engine of War does less damage, maybe the Night Elves won't deny too much anymore.
Oh, so it's a buff to bad Night Elf players. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Nice thinking.
And I also think that's the reason why the archers have more HP, because if it takes longer, it's more like harassable. So that's why they get this buff. So we got that covered as well.
Wait, what? If it takes longer, it's more harassable?
Yeah, like if you have to spend more time at a creep spot, it's more likely that you get creepjacked or that a Blade Master comes around and harasses you.
Oh, okay.
So having more HP helps, of course.
Oh, that makes sense. That's very far thinking.
I know, man. And people say I have no clue about Warcraft, huh?
Uh-huh. Apparently you do.
He's silently agreeing with all the haters, but just keeps a smile on to make me happy. Naga Sea Witch mana shield doubled.
Yep, still won't get used.
Yep, I agree.
Yep, I guess there's not a lot of things to talk about there. Maybe if you get a level 10 Naga in an FFA.
Any suggested changes to mana shield that could make it viable?
You have two good spells already.
Yep.
Why would you choose this over?
To
I
make
mean,
her
it's an
tanky.
offensive hero. It's the paladin, for example, is a in-your-face melee hero. It makes sense to have a defensive shield on him.
Yeah.
The Naga needs mana to be useful, and it needs to be attacking from the front, from the rear side of your army. So it just doesn't fit in an intelligence-based, attack-based hero.
Yeah. So remove it and replace it with something else.
Yeah, I mean, all heroes don't have to have 3 useful spells because you don't really get to use. I think this is a good spell in this buffed, in its buffed capacity when you reach those high levels. 3, for example, level 2, 3 damage absorbed per mana, and you have a level 7 or 8 Naga, which has like 600 to 800 mana. That's a lot of bonus HP. So it's not necessarily a bad spell, it's just that it doesn't fit the hero and the other spells do. If it was a completely useless spell, I could see why they would feel like they would need to change it. But I think it kind of has somewhat of a weird place in the very odd situations you get a very high level Naga.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's do the panda talk. Peter is not amused. The
Yes, they aren't.
The area of effect dealer or damage dealer got nerfed quite a bit. Costs more mana now and deals less damage, especially on level 2 and 3. I think level 1 is fairly okay. It wasn't too strong on level 1, but 2 and 3 got nerfed so hard.
Oh, wow. That's, yeah. Wait, did it deal damage over time for 21 seconds?
I was baffled as well.
Did it actually deal 1,360 damage?
That was the cap, apparently.
That is insane. I mean, it felt good, but I can't believe these numbers.
It felt way too strong. It was way too strong. I think the damage cap of 1,000, the TC has that on level 3. And the Panda has that on level 2, or had that on
I guess
3.
It's 140 mana, and it doesn't really have the same range.
Yeah, true. But it's like, this is so good for flying machines. Once again, we mentioned this when we started talking.
Yes.
Very hard to counter them now. Harder to break human towers and expansions as well, especially versus Night Elf, I feel.
Yes, and I feel like the way that the Goblin Alchemist works now, he already made the Panda way easier to deal with as a human player against Night Elf, for example. It just so heavily counters Breath of Fire on your mortars or casters. Yeah. So in that regard, I'm not sure it was needed. As a human player, I don't see this change as necessary, honestly. But maybe in other matchups, for example, Night Elf against Undead, I don't know.
I feel that Breath of Fire was always by far the strongest area of effect damage spell. For its cost, especially.
Yeah, it's so non-situational. It always works.
Yeah.
And it's from a neutral hero.
Yeah. And it has somehow it has no unit limit or something that it hits. It's kind of weird in that regard. There's something wrong or odd about it. That makes it unique. But I feel this had to be nerfed at times.
Yeah, maybe. Just not now when they buffed the counter, which is the Alchemist. But that is only speaking from a human perspective.
Yeah.
I guess the Undead player won't really go for an Alchemist third against Nightel, for example.
No,
So
I don't think so
maybe.
either.
I
What
guess
else is
they
this?
maybe play tested things and realized that some, because we are always putting these changes kind of in a vacuum a lot of the
Yeah.
time, and we have to keep in mind that there are so many changes
Yeah.
that things might work very differently than what we have in mind.
True. Absolutely
Um,
true.
and this is just the PTR, so it's a public test realm made for testing the changes.
Yeah, I feel like I have to repeat that a million times over the next 3 to 4 weeks, that people don't
Yes.
realize that this is not set in stone, and I have to like preach it again and again. Do your feedback, give us your feedback, post it in Reddit and the Battle.net forum so Blizzard reads it.
But did they? Sorry.
Yep.
Did they change anything from the previous PTR to the live patch?
They did a second update on the first PTR. That was when the Demon Hunter change was implemented as well.
Uh-huh.
They did some changes, yeah.
But did they revert any of the... I mean, they added more changes, but did they actually listen to any feedback and change things that
Well,
were
I got an...
at first implemented?
I can't remember, actually. I got an earlier version of these patch notes, so they did work on it. There were changes on these patch notes, but I'm pretty sure they will be thinking about it. They will, like, they read feedback very carefully, so... they changed the zoom out, exactly.
Oh, yes.
That they changed.
Oh, yes. I didn't mean it as in Blizzard doesn't listen to us, the community, but more like in balance regards, as I don't necessarily feel like there was anything to change after the PTR either, so I can't say that they did a bad job in anything.
Yeah, I think the first patch, though, patch 1.29, was more careful, and it was only heroes, so I think it was easier, because...
Yeah, probably.
I think it
so
was
too.
easier, because, I don't know. I don't know why. It's just easier, I guess. It's getting late, guys, getting late.
Yeah, I feel so as well. I'm getting tired.
Okay, so, just a quick opinion on the map pool changes. 3 maps are out. Two Rivers, Cirrus Fall or something. I have to look that up, which one got deleted. Floodplains and Road to Stratform are out. I think everybody agrees it's a good thing.
I didn't play Battle.net since I only played NetEase.
Okay.
But I know from watching streams that, for example, Two Rivers, it doesn't even look like a fun map to play on and spectate.
Yeah, true.
So
therefore, we have Concealed Hill. Did you know that one from NWC3 or something?
I recognize it.
They wanted to implement it to W3 Arena, but never did.
Concealed Hill. Was that played in NWC3?
I don't know. It was played somewhere, I think. Someone pushed very, very hard for it to make it part of the community. And now it worked, so that's pretty good. They worked a lot on that map, so I assume it's good.
Okay.
Northern Isles, I have no idea. At first I thought it's a typo and they wanted to implement Nomad Isles, but there's actually a map, Northern Isles. And Swamp Temple, which is really cool because it's from the Back to Warcraft and Hive mapping contest. So, yeah, 3 new community maps then.
What was it called, the last one?
Swamp Temple.
Swamp Temple. I think maybe that was the one I tested a bit when he was creating the map.
Nice.
And if it was a pretty cool map. Let me check. Anyways, I think it was the one, and I think that map seemed very interesting to me, and I would like to play that one.
All right.
So I'm always happy with the changes in map pools, but I think in Warcraft, these core maps still has a place. I know back in the days people used to complain a lot that we were still playing on these very aged maps, but maps like TMTR, which other ones
Echo.
are really old, Echo, the game is somewhat balanced around these maps.
Yeah, I agree.
And
they are good, so.
Yeah, and they are good. I mean, getting rid of Gnullwood, getting rid of Lost Temple were good decisions. Those maps weren't good.
Yeah.
But Turtle Rock, for example, is for the most part a good map.
Except the
so as long as you rotate some maps out, maybe some maps back in again eventually, we'll see. But keeping maps, I don't think necessarily is a bad thing, as I think many people seem to think.
Agree. Yeah, I agree with you there. Especially like we do have kind of new maps with Amazonia, Last Refuge at the moment. The new Terranas is of course always interesting, at least. So let's see if Concealed Hills, Northern Isles, and Swamp Temple do a little better than the last ones they updated. I think it's a better idea to use community maps that are developed for years and people worked on those maps for month and month and month, than to just redo maps like they did in 1.29 with the LV versions.
And it really shows some. It shows us that they want the community to be connected to the creative process, I guess, which is very. It makes me feel optimism towards the future.
That is a very nice closing sentence, I guess. I'll let you off the hook. Thank you so much for, how long is it, 2 hours or something?
It's been a while.
Oh my, 3 hours.
My voice is starting to crack. I almost feel like my brain is melting.
So sorry.
But it's been a pleasure. It's been fun.
We will do this again, I hope, when everybody tested it a little, and then maybe we do a roundtable with Starshaped and the other guys to see how our theory crafting transitioned into practical Warcraft on the PTR.
Yes, it will be very interesting to follow these changes. I can't wait.
All right, so hands to the keyboard and mouse, go play or sleep or whatever are you doing now?
Yes, I will do that.
All right,
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Have a good evening.
Bye-bye, mate.
Bye-bye.
Thorzain, ladies and gentlemen, very, very cool insights, and especially the changes towards human, but also around the block. I will do some more of these things. I did one with Starshaped already. I will do one with Ente and with Ena, so that will land on our YouTube channel, where there is my initial response to the patch notes. They changed a little until now, because I spoke to more and more people and got educated a little. But yeah, you can see that on our YouTube as well. We have a few more supporters here. That's pretty cool to see. Thank you, Platin89, 9-month resub. I shall call my baby 1.30. Oh, he likes those changes. Expect86 for 11-month pimps. Thank you very much. Shout out to Warcraft3.info. Also 11-month. And good times were had by all. That's good. Thank you, Chaco, for the host. Thank you, Deadman on Fire for 26-month resub. Thank you, Anis Nairo for 2 months. Less than 3 back to W. Thanks for your work. Thanks for watching, mate. Yerlo1234 and John Bambo123 for the Prime sub. Witty for the 3-month resub. Good thing I switched to Orc. Well, yeah, seems to be good Orc times ahead. Why did Nerdy 2-month resub? UD in 1.30 Lul. So he doesn't seem to be too hopeful for the Necro changes. Good old Wan. Nerto 17-month resub. Patch Hype. Congo Chunk 10-month resub. And Jack owned 14-month resub. Thank you all so much for the subs, boys. And yeah, I think that's it. 3 hours of patch talk. I think that's enough for now. Test it. Download the PTR. Tell us your feedback, especially on Reddit, because Blizzard is observing those mega threads that we have for the PTR patches. We have 44 comments already. I will dig through all of those. And yeah. Thank you so much for watching. We need this feedback. It's really important to make 1.30 great. Celebrate the 16th birthday of Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos, which is today. And we will be streaming tomorrow for EWCL and on Sunday for Masters. What was it called again? Masters Colosseum. Masters Colosseum, the Chinese Open qualifier on Sunday, so this is gonna be good. And I just noted that 120 is born on the release day of Warcraft 3. Interesting. So, congrats to 120. I hope you enjoyed it all, and show matches? We can do some show matches for sure. I have to start organizing them. And with that being said, there's only one more thing to do, and that's the goodbye routine. And I hope you feel more educated about the patch notes, and I hope you, give us all feedback. Neo out! It was fun.